They kept saying, family helps family, while I helped pay my golden sister's mortgage. But when I asked for help while I was about to lose my business, they all ghosted me. When I survived and my business started booming, suddenly they wanted back because family helps family. So I shut them down real quick. My name is Russell, and I'm 36 years old. For most of my life, I believed in the phrase, family helps family, because that's what my parents drilled into me from childhood. What I didn't realize until much later was that this rule only seemed to apply when I was the one doing the helping. I run a small digital marketing agency in Portland. Nothing flashy, but it pays the bills. I started it 5 years ago in a converted warehouse downtown with 2 employees, Jessica and David. We help local businesses establish their online presence. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and I'm good at it. My sister Caroline is 3 years younger and has always been the family star. Where I'm methodical and quiet, she's charismatic and bold. Where I chose steady work and gradual growth, she swung for the fences with big dreams and bigger risks. Our parents celebrated this difference, calling her ambitious and driven, while describing me as reliable and practical, words that sound like compliments but feel like consolation prizes. Growing up, the favoritism was obvious. Caroline got fancy dance lessons while I got hand-me-down soccer cleats. She got a new car for her 16th birthday. I inherited Dad's temperamental pickup truck. Her graduation party was a catered affair with 50 guests. Mine was a backyard barbecue with hamburgers and store-bought cake. The message was clear. Caroline was special, and I was steady. Caroline works in real estate. At least she did when the market was good. She's the type who can sell ice to an Eskimo, which served her well during the boom years. She bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house with granite countertops, drove a leased new BMW, and lived the lifestyle that made our parents beam with pride at family gatherings. Every Sunday dinner became Caroline's showcase. She'd regale us with stories of million-dollar listings and celebrity clients while our parents hung on every word. When I shared updates about my business, conversations would shift back to Caroline within minutes. "That's nice, Russell," Mom would say when I mentioned landing a new client. "Caroline, tell us more about that waterfront property." I was the steady one, the backup plan, the reliable foundation. And for years, I accepted that role without question, not realizing that foundations get walked on and eventually taken for granted. The trouble started 2.5 years ago when the real estate market cooled. Caroline's income dropped dramatically, and suddenly those big risks didn't look so smart. The mortgage became a nightmare. BMW payments turned stressful, and for the first time in her adult life, Caroline faced real financial pressure. I noticed the change during Sunday dinners. Caroline, who usually dominated conversations, became quiet and withdrawn. She'd pick at her food and check her phone constantly, her confidence replaced by anxious energy. The crisis hit when Caroline showed up at my apartment unannounced one October evening. She stood outside in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, a far cry from her usual polish. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. She collapsed on my secondhand couch, looking around my modest apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. "Russell, I'm in trouble. Financial trouble. I haven't closed a deal in 3 months. I'm behind on everything. Mortgage, car payments, credit cards." She showed me a spreadsheet on her phone. The numbers were brutal. Nearly $20,000 in arrears, with the bank already sending default notices. "I need $15,000 just to bring the mortgage current," she said, eyes welling up, "or I'm going to lose the house." We talked for 2 hours. I helped her prioritize debts and ran my own numbers the next morning. My business was stable, savings healthy. I could help, but it would mean putting my expansion plans on hold. That's when the family meetings started. The first Sunday dinner felt different. More formal, like a board meeting. Mom made Caroline's favorite pot roast. Dad opened special wine. They were trying to be supportive, but tension filled the room. "I need $15,000 to avoid foreclosure," Caroline finally said, voice breaking. After discussing her depleted savings and exhausted options, that familiar silence fell. Our parents exchanged glances. They were comfortable but not wealthy. $15,000 was significant money for them. That's when all eyes turned to me. "Russell," my mother said in that gentle tone she used when she wanted something, "your business has been doing well, hasn't it?" I shifted uncomfortably. "It's doing okay. We're growing steadily." I didn't mention that growing steadily meant I was barely breaking even most months, plowing every extra dollar back into the business. "Family helps family," my father added, deploying the golden rule like a moral weapon. Caroline would do the same for you if the situation were reversed. Would she? I wondered. When I was starting my business and working 18-hour days while living on instant ramen, Where was her support? When I couldn't afford to replace my broken laptop and was doing design work on a machine that crashed every 20 minutes, where was her offer to help? But looking at Caroline's tear-stained face, those thoughts felt petty. She was still my little sister. How much would you need each month? I asked. Her head snapped up, hope flooding her features. The mortgage is $3,200 a month. If you could help with half of that, just temporarily, I could manage the rest. $1,600 a month. I did quick mental calculations. My rent was $1,200, business expenses $2,000, personal expenses maybe $800 if I was careful. It would be tight but manageable. And this would be temporary? I asked. 6 months max, Caroline said quickly. The market always recovers. I just need to get through this rough patch. The weight of their expectations settled on my shoulders, like a familiar burden. Okay, I said. I can help. The relief was palpable. Caroline burst into tears and hugged me while my parents beamed with pride. For a moment, I felt like the hero of the story. This means everything to me, Caroline whispered. I won't forget this. Ever. That was the beginning of a 2.5-year arrangement that nearly destroyed my business. The first few months weren't terrible. I set up automatic transfers, and Caroline seemed to be trying hard, calling with updates on potential deals that always seemed promising, but never materialized. I've got 3 properties going to market, she'd tell me during check-ins. One of them is definitely going to close. But months turned into seasons, and the big sales never came. Every sure thing fell through. Financing collapsed, inspections revealed problems, buyers got cold feet. The temporary $1,600 became $1,800 when she needed roof repairs, then $2,000 when property taxes came due. It's just this once, she promised. It's actually saving money in the long run. By month 8, I felt the real strain. Jessica had been asking about a raise. She'd been with me 2 years and deserved it. David needed new software costing $300 monthly. I had to tell them both to wait. The reliable son was slowly going broke while keeping his sister's dream house afloat. The worst part was turning down opportunities to expand. A local brewery wanted us to handle their complete rebranding, a project that would have been worth $15,000, but I couldn't take it on because I didn't have the cash flow to hire the freelance photographer and videographer we'd need. A tech startup offered us a retainer that would have provided steady monthly income, but I had to decline because I couldn't afford to hire the additional staff to service the account properly. Every month, as I transferred $1,600 or more to Caroline, I watched potential growth slip away. My business was treading water instead of swimming forward, and I was starting to feel resentful about it. But every time I considered bringing it up with Caroline, she'd call with news of another almost deal that was surely going to come through next month. When my own office lease came up for renewal after a year of supporting Caroline, the landlord wanted to increase the rent by $400 a month. In a normal year, I would have been able to absorb the increase or negotiate from a position of strength. Instead, I had to beg for a smaller increase and agree to sign a 3-year lease to get it. Business must be tough, the landlord commented as we signed the paperwork. Usually, tenants in your position are looking to expand, not lock in longer terms to avoid increases. He was right, of course. My business should have been expanding. Instead, Caroline's crisis had become my crisis, and her temporary problem had become my permanent limitation. But every time I brought up the subject with Caroline, she had a new excuse and a new promise. The market was taking longer to recover than anyone expected. Interest rates were affecting buyer behavior. The election was making people cautious about major purchases. There was always a reason why this month was different, why next month would be better. Meanwhile, our parents continued to praise both of us at family gatherings. Caroline for working so hard during difficult times, and me for being such a good brother. The praise felt hollow, especially when I noticed that they never asked Caroline when she planned to start paying me back. But they regularly asked me how my business was doing, always with the clear subtext of whether I could continue supporting her. You're doing such a good thing, Mom would tell me privately. I know it's not easy, but Caroline really needs this. She'll turn things around soon. Family helps family, Dad would add, whenever I looked tired or stressed. That's what we do for each other. But I started to notice that the help only seemed to flow in one direction. When I mentioned that I was looking for new clients, no one offered to make introductions. When I talked about the challenges of growing a small business, the conversation would quickly shift to Caroline's struggles, which were apparently more pressing and deserving of sympathy. The breaking point came in month 18, just as winter was turning to spring in Portland. I was in the middle of what should have been the biggest opportunity of my career. A large tech company, Novatech Solutions, had approached me about handling their complete digital marketing overhaul. They were launching a new product line and needed everything from brand positioning to social media campaigns to website redesign. It was a six-figure contract that would have transformed my business and set me up for years of growth. But to handle a client that size, I needed to expand quickly. I needed new equipment, additional software licenses, upgraded internet service, and most importantly, I needed to hire at least 3 new employees immediately. The math was brutal but simple. I could either keep supporting Caroline, or I could seize this opportunity. I couldn't do both. The Novatech project manager, a sharp woman named Lisa, was clear about the timeline. "We need to know by Friday if you can handle this scope," she told me during our final meeting. "We've got other agencies interested, but your portfolio impressed us. The question is whether you have the bandwidth." I went home that night and spread all my financial records across my kitchen table. Bank statements, business expenses, Caroline's payment history, everything laid out in stark black and white. The numbers didn't lie. Between Caroline's monthly payments and my limited cash reserves, I couldn't afford to hire the staff I needed for the Novatech contract. I couldn't even afford the equipment upgrades, let alone the payroll. But I also couldn't afford to pass up this opportunity. Novatech wasn't just a big contract. It was the kind of client that would establish my agency as a serious player in the market. Other companies would take notice. My existing employees would finally get the raises and career advancement they deserved. I could move to a better office, invest in better technology, maybe even start working fewer than 60 hours a week. The choice was between Caroline's comfort and my future, between my family's expectations and my own dreams, between being the reliable son who always puts others first and being the business owner who makes hard decisions for the greater good. I called a family meeting. We gathered again at my parents' house on a Sunday, but this time the energy was different. I was the one who looked stressed, and Caroline seemed more relaxed than she'd been in months. She'd just signed a new client and was optimistic about her prospects. She was wearing a new dress, nothing expensive but new nonetheless, and her hair was professionally styled. "I need to talk to everyone about the arrangement with Caroline," I said, cutting straight to the point. Caroline's smile faltered slightly. "What about it? It's been 18 months now, and I have a situation with my business. I've got an opportunity that could change everything, but I need capital to make it happen. I need to redirect the money I've been sending Caroline toward this expansion." The room went quiet. My parents looked uncomfortable, and Caroline's face had gone pale. The pleasant family dinner atmosphere evaporated instantly. "What kind of opportunity?" Dad asked, his accountant's brain immediately focusing on the numbers. I explained the Novatech situation in detail, the scope of work, the potential revenue, the expansion requirements. I showed them the contract proposal on my phone, let them see the dollar amounts involved. By any objective measure, this was the chance I'd been working toward for 5 years. "How long would you need to stop the payments?" Mom asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Permanently," I said. "This was supposed to be temporary, remember? 6 months max. It's been 3 times that long." Caroline leaned forward, her voice rising. "Russell, you can't just cut me off. I still need help. The market's improving, but I'm not there yet. I've got deals in the pipeline that are going to close soon." "You've had deals in the pipeline for a year and a half," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. "I understand that the market is tough, but I can't carry both of us indefinitely. This contract could set my business up for years. It's not just about me. I'll be able to hire people, create jobs, contribute more to the economy." My father frowned. "But Caroline will lose her house if you stop helping, and I'll lose my business if I don't take this opportunity. I've already had to turn down smaller contracts because I don't have the resources to handle them properly. My employees haven't gotten raises in 2 years because I don't have the cash flow. I'm stunting my own growth to maintain Caroline's lifestyle." That last phrase hung in the air like an accusation, which maybe it was. Caroline's face flushed red. "Lifestyle?" she snapped. "You think I'm living some kind of luxury lifestyle? I'm barely keeping my head above water. You're keeping your $3,200 mortgage and your BMW lease," I shot back. "When my business was struggling to get off the ground, I lived in a studio apartment and drove a 15-year-old Honda. I made sacrifices to build something sustainable." "That's different," Mom interjected. "You were young and single. Caroline has responsibilities, commitments. What about my responsibilities? What about my commitments to my employees, to my clients, to my own future?" That's when Caroline played her trump card, the phrase that had controlled my decisions for so long. "Family helps family, Russell. You've always said that. You can't just abandon me when I need you most." There it was again, the golden rule, but this time being used against me like a weapon. I looked around the table and saw the same expectation in everyone's eyes that I'd seen my entire life. I was supposed to sacrifice my opportunity for Caroline's stability. I was supposed to be the reliable one, the practical one, the one who put family first no matter the cost to myself. What if I could find investors for your expansion? Caroline suggested desperately. I know people in real estate development. They have money and they're always looking for good investment opportunities. I shook my head. I can't wait for maybes. This opportunity has a timeline. The client needs an answer by Friday. Either I can afford to expand or I can't. Either I take this contract or someone else does. But if you just give me a few more months, Caroline pressed, I know things will turn around. I can feel it. The market's shifting, and I've got several hot prospects. You've been saying that for 18 months, I said, my voice harder than I intended. How many more months? How many more almost deals that fall through at the last minute? How long am I supposed to put my life on hold? The meeting ended without resolution, but the pressure was clear. I was being asked to choose between my family's approval and my business's future. The choice, when I really thought about it, wasn't as hard as I'd expected it to be. That Thursday night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my small bedroom. My laptop was open beside me, showing the Novatech contract for the 100th time. 6 figures. A chance to finally build the business I'd dreamed of. Security for my employees. A future that wasn't dependent on scraping by month to month. I thought about Caroline, about the house she'd bought at the peak of the market, about the dreams she'd chased without considering the risks. I thought about my parents, about their disappointment when I inevitably let them down. I thought about the golden rule that had shaped my entire life. Family helps family. But for the first time, I asked myself a different question. Who was helping me? When Caroline needed money, the entire family mobilized to support her. When I needed understanding, support, or even just acknowledgement of my sacrifice, where was that same energy? When I talked about my business challenges, was anyone offering to help? Or were they just making sure I could continue being Caroline's solution? I realized that family helps family had always meant Russell helps family. Everyone else was family. I was the help. Friday morning, I called Lisa Chen at Novatech. I'll take the contract. That afternoon, I called Caroline and told her that the monthly payments would end with the next one. I offered to help her find other solutions, to look at her budget together, to brainstorm alternatives. But the money had to stop. You're abandoning me, she said, her voice cold with anger. After everything our family has done for you, this is how you repay us? What has our family done for me, Caroline? I asked quietly. I've been supporting you for 18 months. When did you last support me? She hung up on me. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with calls and texts. My mother was disappointed in my selfishness and couldn't believe I was choosing money over family. My father thought I was making a huge mistake and forgetting what family means. Caroline sent a series of increasingly angry messages, accusing me of abandoning her when she needed me most, and caring more about money than the people who loved me. But the most telling response came from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, who'd always been on the periphery of our family drama. She called that evening, and I expected another guilt trip. I heard about your decision, she said. Yeah, I'm sure you did. Good for you. That stopped me short. What? I said good for you. It's about time someone in this family told Caroline that actions have consequences. Linda went on to tell me things I'd never known. How Caroline had borrowed money from her 2 years ago and never paid it back. How she'd promised to help their cousin's son with college connections, but never followed through. How she'd taken credit for organizing their mother's funeral arrangements when Linda had done all the work. Your parents have spoiled her rotten, Linda said bluntly. And they've taken advantage of your good nature for too long. Family helps family? Well, when was the last time anyone in this family helped you? After we hung up, I sat in my empty apartment and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. For the first time in my adult life, I'd made a decision based on what was best for me, not what was expected of me. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time. The worst part was the silence that followed. After the initial barrage of angry communications, my family went quiet. No more Sunday dinners, no more casual check-in calls, no more family group chat messages. I'd been effectively ghosted by the people who'd spent my entire life telling me that family was the most important thing. The irony wasn't lost on me. When they needed my help, family was everything. When I needed their understanding, I was suddenly on my own. But I had work to do. The Novatech contract was everything I'd hoped for, but scaling up quickly while managing cash flow was incredibly challenging. I worked 18-hour days, lived on coffee and determination, and slowly built the team I needed to deliver on my promises. My first hire was Sarah, a brilliant social media strategist who'd been freelancing for various agencies. She was expensive, more than I'd ever paid anyone before, but worth every penny. Next came Miguel, a web developer whose portfolio made my old work look amateurish. Finally, I brought on Tom, a project manager who could juggle multiple campaigns without breaking a sweat. The first few months were brutal. Learning to manage a larger team, coordinating complex campaigns, dealing with the growing pains of expansion, it all happened while I was still processing the emotional fallout from cutting off my family. There were nights when I questioned my decision. Caroline's house did go into foreclosure, and I heard through mutual friends that she'd had to move back in with our parents. Part of me felt guilty, but a larger part of me was angry that my family couldn't understand why I'd made the choice I did. I threw myself into work with a focus I'd never had before. Maybe it was spite, maybe it was determination, or maybe it was just the realization that I was truly on my own for the first time in my life. Whatever it was, it worked. The Novatech client was thrilled with our work. Their product launch exceeded all expectations, and they credited our campaigns as a major factor in their success. They extended our contract and referred us to other companies in their network. Word spread in Portland's business community that my agency was the one to watch. Within 6 months, we'd moved to a larger office space in a trendy part of downtown. Within a year, my 3-person team had grown to 8 employees. We invested in top-tier equipment, subscribed to premium software suites, and started winning awards for our campaigns. By year 2, after cutting off Caroline's payments, we were one of the fastest-growing digital marketing agencies in the Pacific Northwest. I was featured in Portland Business Journal, invited to speak at marketing conferences, and fielding calls from companies wanting to acquire my agency. The business I'd nearly sacrificed to support Caroline was now worth more than I'd ever dreamed possible. My employees were thriving too. Jessica, who'd been patient about her raise request, was now my creative director, with a salary that reflected her contributions. David had become our lead developer and was building cutting-edge websites that other agencies tried to copy. Sarah, Miguel, and Tom had all been promoted as we'd grown, and each of them was earning more than I'd made in my best year before the expansion. We'd become the kind of agency that attracted the best talent, retained great employees, and delivered work that genuinely made a difference for our clients. I was proud of what we'd built, but more than that, I was proud of the decision that had made it possible. And that's when my phone started ringing again. The first call came from my mother on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. It was one of those crisp fall days in Portland when the leaves are just starting to turn, and I was in my corner office reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant told me I had a personal call. "Russell, honey, it's Mom." Her voice was different, warmer than it had been in 2 years, like the way she used to talk to me when I was a child and she needed me to do chores or help with something around the house. "Hi, Mom. I saw the article about your company in Portland Business Journal. We're so proud of you." I waited for more, but she seemed to expect a response. "Thanks. The photos of your new office are just beautiful. And 8 employees. I had no idea you'd grown so much." "Yeah, it's been a busy couple of years. Listen, I was hoping we could all get together. It's been too long since we've seen you. Caroline's been asking about you constantly. She feels terrible about how things ended between you two." I leaned back in my ergonomic office chair, a far cry from the folding chair I'd used when I was sending Caroline $1,600 a month, and looked out at the Portland skyline. 2 years ago, I would have jumped at the chance for reconciliation. Now I felt nothing but suspicion. Has she? Of course. She never stopped caring about you. We all miss you terribly. What do you want, Mom? Can a mother want to see her son? We were hoping you might come to Sunday dinner this weekend. Like old times. Like old times. When I was useful. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. The calls continued throughout the week, each one more transparent than the last. Caroline left a voicemail saying she was so sorry, and that she never meant for things to get so messed up between us. She talked about how proud she was of my success, and how she'd always known I'd make it big someday. My father sent a text about being proud of my accomplishments and wanting to put the past behind us where it belongs. He mentioned that he'd been telling his clients about my agency's success and how he'd always known I was destined for great things. Even my Aunt Ruth, who I'd barely spoken to in 5 years, reached out to say the family missed me and that everyone was talking about my business success. The transparency of it all would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what they thought they could accomplish, what their strategy was for getting back into my good graces. So I agreed to Sunday dinner. Walking into my parents' house felt like stepping back in time. The same furniture, the same smells from my mother's kitchen, the same family photos on the mantle, including several new ones of Caroline that had been added since I'd last been there. Notably absent were any pictures of me or my business success, despite Mom's claimed pride in my achievements. Caroline was there when I arrived, and she looked different, older, more worn down. The confidence and spark that had always defined her seemed dimmed, replaced by a nervous energy that reminded me of how she'd looked during her worst financial struggles. She hugged me awkwardly and mumbled another apology. "I'm so sorry, Russell. About everything. I know I handled things badly, and I've regretted it every day for 2 years." Dinner was a careful dance of small talk and forced cheer. They asked about my business, but in vague, surface-level ways that made it clear they'd done some research, but didn't really understand what I did. Nobody mentioned the previous 2 years or the contracts that had gone unanswered. It was as if they thought we could just pretend the separation had never happened. Mom had made pot roast, the same meal she'd served the night Caroline first asked for help. Dad opened a bottle of wine, probably the same brand he'd served that night too. The symbolism felt deliberate, like they were trying to recreate the family harmony that had existed before everything fell apart. "Your new office sounds amazing," Caroline said as we sat down to eat. "I drove by it last week. Very impressive location." "You drove by?" She blushed slightly. "I was in the area for a client meeting. The building is beautiful. You must be doing very well to afford space downtown." After dessert, Caroline's favorite chocolate cake, just like old times, my father cleared his throat in the way he always did when he was about to deliver a speech or make an important announcement. "Russell, we want you to know how sorry we are about how things went 2 years ago. We were all under a lot of stress, and we didn't handle the situation as well as we should have. Family should stick together through difficulties." I nodded but didn't respond. The apology felt rehearsed, like they'd practiced it beforehand. Caroline spoke up, her voice earnest. "I especially want to apologize. I know I took advantage of your generosity, and I'm grateful for everything you did for me. I should have been more understanding about your business needs." "Are you?" I asked. She looked surprised by the question. "Of course I am. You saved my credit, kept me from bankruptcy. I'll never forget that." "Then why did it take my business becoming successful for you to reach out? Why now, after 2 years of silence?" The table went quiet. My mother tried to smooth things over with her practiced diplomacy. "We just needed time to process everything, honey. Family disagreements are hard, and sometimes people need space to heal." "Family disagreements," I repeated slowly. "Is that what we're calling it?" My father leaned forward, using his reasonable business owner voice. "The important thing is that we're all here now. Family is family, and we want to move forward together." And there it was again. Family is family. The phrase that had controlled my decisions for so long, now being deployed to erase 2 years of abandonment. Caroline reached across the table toward me, her movements calculated and deliberate. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said before, about finding investors for business expansion. Well, now that your company is doing so well, maybe we could work together in some capacity. I've been developing some ideas for real estate ventures that might benefit from digital marketing expertise, and with your success and industry connections." The pieces fell into place with startling clarity. This wasn't about reconciliation or family healing. This was a business pitch disguised as an apology. They'd read about my success, done the math on what I was probably earning now, and decided it was time to rebuild our relationship. Not because they missed me, but because I might be useful again. I stared at Caroline for a long moment, then started laughing. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of bitter laughter that comes when you realize how completely you've been played. "You think I'm here to invest in your next venture?" "Not invest exactly," Caroline said quickly, her carefully prepared pitch stumbling over my reaction. "More like a partnership, a family business collaboration. You have the marketing expertise and business connections. I have the real estate knowledge and client relationships. We could help each other." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "It would be wonderful to have you two working together. Caroline has such innovative ideas, and you have the experience and resources to make them happen. It could be perfect. Like family helping family," Dad added, bringing the conversation full circle. I stood up from the table slowly. The same table where I'd agreed to help Caroline 2.5 years ago. The same table where I'd been made to feel guilty for prioritizing my own business survival. The same chairs where my family had sat in judgment of my choices and found me wanting. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," I said, my voice calm but firm. "When Caroline needed help, family was everything. When I needed understanding and support to save my business, I was selfish and greedy. Now that my business is successful, suddenly we're family again, and you want me to fund Caroline's next venture." "That's not how it was," my mother protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "That's exactly how it was. I gave Caroline over $30,000 across 18 months. When I needed to stop so I could save my own business, you all cut me off completely. No calls, no visits, no support. Nothing. Caroline's face was flushed. We were hurt and angry. You abandoned me when I needed you most, right when I was starting to get back on my feet. I abandoned you? I supported you for a year and a half longer than we originally agreed. I sacrificed opportunities for my own business to keep your house afloat. I turned down contracts, delayed hiring, put my employees' raises on hold, all so you could maintain your lifestyle. And when I finally had to choose between your comfort and my survival, you disappeared. My father tried to intervene, using the same patronizing tone he'd used when I was a child. Son, we all made mistakes. Let's not relitigate the past. What matters is moving forward as a family. The past? I turned to face him directly. Dad, you taught me that family helps family. That was your rule, your moral standard that shaped how I understood relationships and loyalty. But apparently, that only applies when I'm the one helping. When I needed my family's understanding and emotional support during the most challenging period of my career, where were you? We needed time, my mother said weakly, recycling her earlier excuse. 2 years of time, right up until you read about my success in a magazine. The room was silent except for the ticking of my mother's antique clock and the distant hum of the dishwasher. I looked around the table at their faces, embarrassed, defensive, calculating. These people had shaped my understanding of family loyalty, and now I was seeing it for what it really was, a one-way street that ran straight to their benefit. Caroline, I said, my voice softer now, but no less firm. Do you know what happened to my business after I stopped supporting you? She shook her head, and I could see in her eyes that she genuinely didn't know. None of them had cared enough to ask. It almost failed. Not because the work wasn't good, but because I'd been bleeding money for so long that I didn't have the resources to handle growth when it came. I worked 18-hour days for months. I ate ramen noodles for dinner more nights than I can count. I had to let go of my apartment and sleep in my office for 3 months to save money for payroll and equipment. Her face paled. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. None of you did. You were all so focused on what I'd taken away from Caroline that you never wondered what it cost me to give it in the first place. I walked toward the front door, then turned back to face them one final time. I survived because I had to, because I learned that the only person I could truly count on was myself. My business succeeded because I stopped trying to carry other people's responsibilities and started focusing on my own potential. Russell, please, my mother said, standing up and reaching toward me. Don't leave like this. We're family. We love you. I paused at the threshold, my hand on the doorknob. You know what I've learned about family over the past 2 years? Real family supports you even when it's inconvenient. Real family celebrates your successes without looking for ways to profit from them. Real family doesn't abandon you when you make hard choices, and then show up with their hands out when those choices pay off. Caroline had tears in her eyes. So you're just going to shut us out forever? After everything we've been through? I'm not shutting you out. I'm just done pretending that our relationship is something it's not. You want to be family? Then be family. Call me because you want to know how I'm doing, not because you want something from me. Support my choices even when they don't benefit you directly. Show up for me the way you expected me to show up for you. I opened the door and stepped out into the cool Portland evening. The air smelled like rain and autumn leaves, clean and fresh after the stifling atmosphere inside. Family helps family, I called back to them one last time. But it goes both ways. I never heard from them again, at least not in the way they'd been calling. The desperate phone calls and transparent reconciliation attempts stopped completely. My mother sends birthday cards now, brief and polite messages wishing me well. Caroline sends occasional texts updating me on her life. She found a job with a property management company and seems to be doing okay financially. My father forwards business articles he thinks might interest me, usually with short notes like, "Thought you'd find this interesting. No deadbeats allowed at Christmas this year, so we're only having your sister and her family," my dad sneered. 2 weeks later, the deadbeat they disowned hosted everyone at his $8 million mountain lodge. Guess whose Christmas got ruined? Hey Reddit, so I, Silas, 35 male, never thought I'd be the type to post here. But let's just say, last Christmas flipped my whole life upside down, in the best way possible. I'm not here to brag or cry for sympathy, just to tell you what happens when the invisible kid finally stops waiting for an invite and builds his own table instead. Buckle up, it gets interesting. My phone buzzed just after sunrise, the screen lighting up with my dad's name. We're keeping Christmas small. No deadbeats this year, so it'll only be your sister and her family. I stared at it for a second, Reread it twice, then typed back, "Got it. Enjoy yourselves." Short, polite, civilized. The kind of reply that says "I don't care" when, in reality, it hits like a slow punch to the ribs. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter and let the silence sit there. Same pattern, different year. Marcy and her picture-perfect life, the family star since day one, and me, the side character they kept forgetting was in the scene. The first time it hit me, I was 13. I just won a regional robotics contest. Built a machine that could move blocks by voice command. Basic, but for a teenager in a garage, it was a miracle. I came running into the living room, certificate in one hand, grease still on my fingers, heart pounding like I'd cracked the code to NASA. Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "That's nice, Silas." Marcy's solo went great last night. Her teacher said she might audition for Juilliard someday. Mom gasped like he'd announced world peace. "Oh, we have to record it for her portfolio." My certificate ended up under a pile of bills on the counter, where it stayed until I eventually threw it out myself. Then there was the drone. I built it from scratch using parts from old RC toys, programmed it to hover, and respond to basic commands. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would finally impress them. I called Mom out to the yard. She watched it lift off, blinked once, said, "Neat, Silas." Then, without missing a beat, added, "Oh, Marcy's debate team made nationals. We're flying out to see her." That one stung. Not because I wanted praise, but because it confirmed what I already knew. Marcy could sneeze and they'd write it in the family newsletter. I could invent teleportation and they'd ask me to keep it down while she practiced her scales. But the one that burned itself into my brain came a little later. I was in the garage, testing another one of my ridiculous projects, as Dad liked to call them. A small wheeled robot that could follow light signals. I had cables all over the floor, half a dozen LEDs blinking in different colors. Marcy came in, scrolling through her phone, wearing one of those oversized scarves she loved. I told her to watch out. She didn't even look down, just walked straight across and tripped over a wire. Next thing I knew, she was screaming, holding her ankle. Dad came running like I'd shot her. "What the hell, Silas?" he yelled. I told her to watch her step. You could have killed her. Look at this mess. Cords everywhere. Tools on the floor." Mom appeared next, dramatic as ever. "We're taking her to urgent care. You are done with this nonsense. Do you understand me?" "It was an accident," I tried to say. Didn't matter. They were already in the car. That night, Dad walked into my room with a cardboard box. "Hand it over." I looked at him, confused. "What?" "Your stuff. All of it. Tools, gadgets, wires. You can embarrass yourself all you want outside this house, but you stay away from your sister." He left with my equipment like it was contraband. They cut my allowance after that, too. Said maybe it'd teach me some responsibility. Marcy got a new pair of designer boots 2 days later to make her feel better. After that, I stopped building for a while. Every time I tried to start something new, I'd hear Dad's voice in my head. "You can embarrass yourself all you want." So I stopped risking embarrassment. I studied quietly, kept my ideas to myself, learned early that curiosity came with a punishment fee. Years later, when I finally got into Caltech, I thought that would change everything. It didn't. They congratulated me like I'd won a raffle. Marcy was getting ready for another choir performance, and Mom said, "We'll visit when things calm down." They never did. I picked up the phone again, stared at my reply. That's how I survived their version of family love. Act like it doesn't hurt, and eventually, maybe it won't. I smirked to myself, the kind of smirk that hides years of quiet resentment. "Merry Christmas, Marcy," I muttered. "Hope your spotlight's bright enough for the both of us." You teenage years were rough, it felt like. Me trying to build something while my family acted like I was putting together junk. When I got into Caltech, I thought that would finally flip the script. Like maybe they'd say, "Wow, Silas, that's insane, we're proud of you." Nope. Dad just said, "That's far from home, huh? You sure about all this computer stuff?" Mom added, "Your sister's law school graduation is the same week. We'll have to see about visiting." They never did. Meanwhile, Marcy sent a text. "Congrats, bro. Guess you'll be a hacker or something now?" LOL. That was it. College was brutal. Everyone around me had backup plans, connections, parents who actually cared. My backup plan was canned soup. I'd call home sometimes, but most of the time they were busy with Marcy's events. Debate nationals, a new promotion, planning her engagement party. My mom talked more about the flowers than my finals. Then came the wedding. That circus. 300 people, a string quartet, chandeliers so bright you could see your reflection in them. Marcy's fiancé, Anthony, was one of those guys who wears cufflinks at breakfast. He barely looked at me. I thought maybe I'd at least get to stand next to her as a groomsman, brother and all. But nope. Anthony had his frat brothers, his cousins, even his high school lacrosse coach. I got handed a flashlight. Dad said, "You're good with wires. Make yourself useful. Help the lighting guy." So I did. I spent most of the night crawling under tables and checking outlets while Marcy floated around in her dress like she was royalty. Every few minutes, someone would say, "You must be so proud," and my parents would smile like they were the ones getting married. When she gave her speech, Mom cried. Dad took videos from every angle. When I said goodbye that night, they were already talking about honeymoon destinations with Anthony's parents. I doubt they even noticed me leaving. The only person who bothered to talk to me for real was Uncle Ray, Dad's younger brother. He's the opposite of my parents. Quiet, sarcastic in a funny way, actually listens when you talk. He pulled me aside after the ceremony, handed me a beer. I didn't even want it, but I appreciated the gesture, and said, "Don't take it personally, kid. They've always been like this. You're not the problem. They just think loud equals successful." It wasn't much, but it stuck. He talked to me like I was a person, not a background prop in the Marcy show. After that, I kept my distance. Holidays, birthdays, whatever, they blended together. The calls became shorter. I still sent them updates, but it was mostly silence on their end. I learned that if I didn't bring up Marcy, the conversation died within a minute. One Thanksgiving, during my junior year, I was short on cash. I'd been working part-time fixing computers in the dorms, but rent had just eaten my last paycheck. Flights were expensive, so I swallowed my pride and called home. "Hey, flights are high this year. You think you could help me out a bit so I can come home for Thanksgiving?" Mom went quiet. Then Dad got on the line. "Don't worry about it, Silas. Whether you come or not won't make much difference. We'll see you at Christmas, maybe." They said it like they were doing me a favor, saving me the trouble. I just sat there on my dorm bed, holding the phone like an idiot. "Right," I said finally. "Yeah, sure. Makes sense." When Thanksgiving came, the dorms were almost empty. Just me, one international student down the hall, and the sound of the vending machine humming in the lounge. I bought microwave noodles from the campus store and ate them in front of my laptop. I scrolled through Facebook. There they were. Mom, Dad, Marcy, Anthony, and their fancy table setup. Matching sweaters, golden turkey, some caption like "family is everything." I laughed out loud. Not the funny kind. The kind you do when your chest feels tight and you don't know what else to do. It wasn't like I expected much. But the realization hit harder than I thought. I wasn't just forgotten. I was optional. Like a side feature they could enable or disable, depending on the season. Later that night, I opened one of my project files, messed around with some code, and told myself I'd make something big one day. Not to show them. Just to know I could. Because sitting there with that cheap instant ramen, watching my family as everything parents pose for photos without even noticing the missing seat at the table, that's when it clicked. I wasn't invisible by accident. They wanted it that way. After Caltech, I moved to Chicago with one suitcase, a laptop that shuts down if it wasn't on the charger, and an offer letter that paid less than what Marcy probably spent on a haircut. The company was a small cybersecurity firm downtown. They liked to call it fast-paced, which really meant you'll live here and forget weekends exist. The work itself wasn't bad. I handled firewall systems, network patches, boring but essential stuff. I was the guy people called when something broke, and somehow, it always broke. I pulled all-nighters fixing servers while my manager took credit for the reports. When bonuses came around, he got one. I gotta keep it up. After 3 years of grinding, showing up early, staying late, learning every system inside out, I finally realized the math didn't add up. Every paycheck felt like an insult. So in 2016, I quit. I remember sitting in my one-bedroom apartment, looking at my resignation email and thinking, well, here goes nothing. I started my own company, Centria, out of my living room. I had one desk, a coffee machine that sounded like it was dying, and the kind of drive that makes you a little stupid. The first few months were chaos. I'd meet clients in coffee shops, sometimes in hotel lobbies because I didn't have an office. I built security systems for small businesses, mom and pop shops, clinics, startups. I was coding 14 hours a day, barely eating, trying to look like I wasn't running this thing solo. For a while, it worked. Money trickled in. I even started thinking maybe this could be the start of something big. Then, one contract went sideways. A client claimed my security update broke their payment system. They stopped paying and threatened to sue. That one client snowballed into 3 others demanding refunds I couldn't afford. My bills stacked up, my rent was late, And just like that, I went from young entrepreneur to guy who might lose his laptop to collections. I called my parents. Mistake number one. Mom answered, her voice dripping with fake concern. Silas, you really should have thought this through. Businesses are risky, you know. Yeah, thanks, Mom. I figured that out, I said, trying to keep my tone calm. I just need a small loan. I'll pay it back in a few months. Dad got on the line. Why don't you just get a real job? Marcy's firm is doing great. She stuck to something stable. I rubbed my temple. I didn't ask for career advice, Dad. Just a short-term loan. You made your choices, he said. Time to live with them. That was the end of that. So I called Marcy. She was a lawyer by then, or at least she liked to remind people she was. I figured maybe she'd point me in the right direction. She answered on the second ring. Loud office noise in the background. Silas, hey, what's up? Need legal help? Yeah, kinda. I'm getting hit with a breach of contract claim from a client. I just need... She cut me off laughing. Wow, already getting sued? Didn't take long, huh? Yeah, hilarious, I said flatly. Can you help or not? Not, she said. Also, don't call me for this stuff. I have actual clients. Then she hung up. I stared at my phone for a solid minute, fighting the urge to throw it. A week later, I got a letter from a collection agency and a warning from my landlord. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by empty coffee cups and printed contracts, thinking maybe I really had messed up my entire life. I had one number left to try. Uncle Ray. He answered on the second ring. Silas boy. What's wrong? You sound like you swallowed a battery. I screwed up, Ray, I said. Company's tanking. I'm broke. I've got a client threatening to sue me, and my parents think I'm a walking punchline. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, You're not screwed. You're just early. Everyone crashes before they figure out how to land. I didn't even know what to say. I wasn't used to someone not rubbing it in. He asked for the details. Every line of the contract, every stupid mistake I made. Then he told me, I've got a buddy who's a lawyer. Old school, cheap, but good. I'll have him call you. And Silas's? Yeah. Don't give up. You've got brains, kid. You just need better people around you. I'll wire you something to keep the lights on. I almost told him not to. But when you're living off vending machine snacks, pride doesn't pay rent. The money hit my account the next morning. Enough to breathe. The lawyer handled the claim, got the case settled quietly. When I called to thank Ray, he said, Now that that's handled, stop wasting time feeling sorry for yourself. I've got a few connections who might actually appreciate what you can do. Let me make a few calls. For the first time in years, someone wasn't telling me I was a disappointment. Over the next 6 months, I rebuilt what was left of my life, sold off my old hardware, closed down Centria officially, and started helping one of Ray's contacts with small security jobs on the side. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. Every time I'd send him a progress update, Ray would reply with something like, Told you, kid. Just keep grinding. You're not done yet. And for the first time since I was a kid holding that stupid robotics certificate, I actually believed it. By the next year, Ray's connections helped me land a director-level job at a mid-sized security firm on the edge of downtown Chicago. It wasn't glamorous, but it was solid. I managed a small team, handled client systems, and learned how real business worked. Not just the code, but the ugly side. Budgets, contracts, clients who wanted the impossible yesterday. I worked like a man possessed. First in, last out, living on caffeine and takeout. Every time something went wrong, I fixed it. Every time someone else froze, I stepped in. Within a year, my boss was calling me the cleanup guy. I didn't mind. Cleaning up other people's messes paid better than making my own. But I started to notice something. The higher-ups weren't half as smart as they thought. They spent meetings arguing about color schemes while I was patching real security holes. They sold expensive solutions that barely worked, then congratulated themselves on how profitable the flaws were. I kept my mouth shut, but it bugged me. 3 years later, around 2020, after one particularly stupid meeting, where a VP suggested we handle a data leak by just deleting it, I'd had enough. I went home, typed my resignation, hit send, and didn't even wait for a response. That night, I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it Shield Path. I wanted something smarter, cleaner, actually bulletproof. A system that small hospitals and retailers could afford without needing a NASA budget. It was insane. I had no funding, no backup, just a pile of ideas, and Ray's voice in the back of my head saying, Don't hold back this time. So I didn't. I rented a tiny office above an old auto shop. The floor creaked, the heater rattled, and the internet went out if someone sneezed too hard downstairs. I didn't care. I brought in my computer towers, some old servers, and a desk I found on Craigslist. My diet became canned soup and cheap instant meals. My sleep schedule was non-existent. Every day I wrote code until my eyes burned. I tested, broke things, rebuilt them. I started waking up on the floor with a keyboard mark on my face. I was so deep in it I barely noticed my phone battery dying from ignored calls. 6 months in, I had the first working version. It wasn't pretty, but it was fast, and it was secure. I sent out some demos. Got polite, "We'll review this," replies. Nothing promising yet, but it was a start. Then the fire happened. It was a Thursday night. I'd been debugging a module for a client test when the lights flickered. I figured the power grid was just throwing a fit again. 5 minutes later, the air smelled like burning plastic. I turned around and saw smoke curling from one of the extension cords near the back wall. "Fuh! Not now!" I yelled to myself, running over. I yanked the plug, but it was too late. The outlet was sizzling, and flames started licking up the drywall. I grabbed the nearest fire extinguisher, pulled the pin, and sprayed until the thing coughed out nothing but air. It wasn't enough. I ran to the door, but then it hit me. The servers. Everything I'd built was on those drives. Months of work. My brain said run, but my legs went the other way. I wrapped my hoodie around my mouth, ran back in, and unplugged the main rig. The smoke was thick enough to make my eyes sting. I dropped half the equipment, tripped over a box, landed wrong on my wrist. Pain shot up my arm. By the time I stumbled out, coughing like an idiot, the fire department was already pulling up. I stood there on the curb, watching the place burn. The office I'd poured my life into turned to black sludge in front of me. When it was over, one of the firefighters came over. "Insurance?" "Yeah," I said automatically. But later I'd learned my policy didn't cover electrical failure from faulty wiring. Basically, I was screwed. That night, I sat in my car staring at the equipment I'd managed to drag out. A half-melted monitor, one fried tower, and a server that looked like it had been through a war zone. For a second, I thought about just quitting. Maybe my parents were right. Maybe I was just wired for disappointment. Then I got a text from Ray. "Heard about the fire. You okay?" I told him what happened. He replied 2 minutes later. "Give me a day. I've got a guy who might be able to help." Next morning, he called. "Old buddy of mine, retired systems engineer. Bit of a hermit, but the man can recover data like nobody's business." I told him you're worth the time. I drove 2 hours out to some small town where this guy lived. He looked like he hadn't seen sunlight in a decade, but he worked magic. Took my damaged drives, hooked them up to his Frankenstein setup and said, "Give me a week." 5 days later, he called. "Didn't get it all," he said when I showed up, "but enough." I took it home, plugged it in, and stared at the code. Half gone, but the core was there. I rebuilt the rest from memory and side notes. Worked day and night. No distractions, no sleep, just raw focus. 3 months later, ShieldPath wasn't just back. It was faster, stronger, smarter. The fire hadn't killed it. It had stripped out the weak parts. A month later, I got an email from a hospital chain I'd pitched to months earlier. They wanted to talk contracts. Then another from a retail group. When I saw the signed agreement come through, I just sat there staring at it, not even sure how to react. I picked up my phone and called Ray. He answered with his usual sarcasm. "You sound like someone who either won the lottery or got arrested." "I got it, Ray," I said. My voice was shaking. "The deal's real." He paused for a second, then laughed. "Then go for it, kid. Don't hold back this time." I didn't plan to. The first hospital contract opened the door, and within 6 months, ShieldPath wasn't just a side project anymore. It was a full company. Word spread fast in the industry. Hospitals told each other, retailers called, even small government offices wanted in. Suddenly, I was on planes every week, pitching, fixing, scaling. It got to the point where I had to hire people just to keep my inbox under control. My first employee was a kid named Adam. Nervous, sharp, reminded me of myself before I grew the permanent dark circles under my eyes. Then came 3 more, then 10. Before I knew it, I was managing a real team. We moved out of my burned-out rental and into an actual office. A clean one this time. The kind where the floor didn't creak and the Wi-Fi didn't die every time someone flushed. I bought real desks, real chairs, even a snack bar. I used to joke that it was the most corporate thing I'd ever done. The growth was ridiculous. A few government offices started testing ShieldPath in pilot programs. Hospitals were recommending it to each other, and retail chains wanted better encryption for customer data. ShieldPath was spreading fast, and every new contract felt unreal. My parents, of course, had no clue. I kept quiet about it. It was funnier that way. At night, I'd look at the growing list of clients and think, so this is what it feels like to be the one they can't ignore. 2 winters later, the big offer came. A cybersecurity conglomerate, the kind that swallows smaller companies like appetizers, reached out. They wanted to buy ShieldPath outright, $50 million. I thought it was a prank at first. I reread the email 4 times before forwarding it to my lawyer. He confirmed it was legit. When the deal went through, I sat in the glass-walled conference room, staring at the final paperwork. The signatures looked fake, like they belonged to someone else. Everyone was shaking my hand, congratulating me, and I was just trying to process the fact that I wasn't broke anymore. I wasn't nothing anymore. Before signing, I called Uncle Ray. "Ray," I said, "I'm about to make you laugh." He groaned. "If this is another one of your security jokes, spare me." "No," I said, smiling. "Remember when you said I'd figure out how to land after crashing? You were right. ShieldPath's being bought out. $50 million. Silence. Then a long whistle. "Well, damn, kid. I was expecting good news, not a Bond villain announcement." I laughed. "You kept me afloat when everyone else bailed. I didn't forget. I already set aside a chunk for you. After the deal closes, you'll get your share. You're officially my partner in this mess." "Silas, that's your money." "It's our money," I cut him off. "You backed me when nobody else did. You earned it." For once, he didn't have a comeback. Just said, "You're a good man, kid," in that gruff voice that sounded like it was allergic to compliments. When I left that meeting, I didn't celebrate. I didn't go buy cars or throw parties. I went home, sat on the couch, and stared at my bank app like it was mocking me. $50 million. You'd think I'd feel unstoppable. Instead, I felt weirdly quiet inside. A week later, I bought a mountainside penthouse lodge in Colorado. It was halfway up a mountain, all glass and dark wood. The kind of place where the silence has weight to it. Floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a valley dusted in snow. I didn't buy it for the flex. I bought it because I wanted space, the kind my family never gave me. I designed everything myself. Picked the furniture, the lights, even the hardware finishes. It wasn't fancy for show. It was efficient, smart, clean. I hired a property manager named Layla, ex-hotel operations type, very organized, no nonsense. She ran the place better than most CEOs. Every morning, I'd stand by those windows with coffee in hand, watching the snow pile up and the fog slide through the trees. It was the exact opposite of my old apartment. Quiet, calm, peaceful. For the first time, I could hear myself think. Life felt stable. Work was solid, money wasn't an issue, and Ray and I talked almost every day. The company's transition went smoothly, and I had enough investments to keep me comfortable forever. All these events lead to the Christmas text day. The "We're keeping Christmas small." No deadbeats this year, so it'll only be your sister and her family. Same tone, same pattern, like I was some coworker they were politely excluding from a group lunch. I actually laughed out loud this time, not bitterly, just that short, sharp kind of laugh that comes from realizing some people never change. I remember standing next to the window. The mountains looked endless, the snow reflecting every bit of light, like the world was made of glass. Down below, my driveway curved through pine trees like something out of a postcard. I stood there holding my phone, thinking about every year they'd done this. Every family-only event, every last-minute uninvite. Marcy's kids probably got matching sweaters. I got a text message. "Small Christmas," I muttered. Yeah, real small without the one person who actually made something of himself. I wasn't the quiet kid begging for approval anymore. I wasn't the one fixing lights at Marcy's wedding or asking for flight money. I'd built something from scratch, from ashes and burned out wiring, and now I had everything they said I couldn't have. So I set the phone down, took another sip of coffee, and smirked at my reflection in the window. If they didn't want me at their table, fine. This year, I'd build my own, and make sure it was one they'd never be invited to again. I called Uncle Ray first. He picked up on the second ring. Same gruff voice. "If you're calling to complain about your parents, get in line." "Not this time," I said. "I'm hosting Christmas. My place. Colorado. You in?" He paused for half a second. "Hell yes, I'm in. I'll bring Clara and whoever else isn't allergic to snow." "Perfect," I said. "Bring everyone." Next, I called Aunt Susie. Then cousins I hadn't seen since high school. Old Caltech friends. Even a few of my first ShieldPath employees who stuck around through the rough days. Every single one said yes, no hesitation. The next few days were chaos. I had Layla handle the logistics. Flights, cars, rooms. She was a machine. By the time she was done, I had a full guest list, private shuttles, and enough food planned to feed a small army. The kitchen looked like a cooking show, the kind with 6 ovens and not enough swear words. By Christmas Eve, the lodge was alive. Luggage stacked by the door, laughter echoing off the walls, people I hadn't seen in years hugging like no time had passed. Uncle Ray walked in first, snow on his jacket, grinning like a kid. Kid, he said, looking around. You undersold it. This place looks like a movie set? Yeah, I said, smirking. Except the script's actually good this time. He laughed, clapped me on the back, and started introducing me to half the relatives I barely remembered. My cousin's kids ran around, sliding on the wood floors. The fireplace roared, music played, and for once, nobody was walking on eggshells. Then the phone started ringing. One of my cousins, Mark, looked down at his screen and said, it's your dad. Answer it, I said, already knowing how this would go. Mark put it on speaker. Hey, Uncle Jerry! Merry Christmas! Mark, where are you guys? We've been waiting all morning. Marcy's kids are opening presents. Mark glanced at me, half smiling. Oh, we're at Silas's place. Colorado. It's amazing up here. Dead silence. Then Dad's voice, sharp. You're where? At Silas's lodge, Mark said, trying not to laugh. He invited everyone. Dad hung up without another word. 2 minutes later, another cousin's phone rang. Then another. Mom was making the rounds now. Same question every time, same answer, same hang-up. I wasn't surprised. That's the thing about entitled people. They think the world's gone wrong when it stops revolving around them. By the time dinner rolled around, Layla had outdone herself. Roasted turkey, glazed ham, enough side dishes to require a second table. The air smelled like butter and cinnamon. The windows glowed orange from the fire. It felt like the kind of Christmas I used to imagine when I was a kid watching holiday commercials. Around 8, there was a knock at the door. Layla opened it, and standing there in a thick coat, snow in his hair, was Grandpa Frank. He grinned when he saw me. Told your parents I had the flu. Got on a plane anyway. I laughed. Of course you did. Come in, old man. He stepped inside, looked around, and just whistled. This is some setup, Silas. You finally did it. About time someone noticed, I said, handing him a plate. He winked. Oh, they noticed. Trust me. Your mom's calling everyone from the church group, trying to figure out how you pulled this off. The rest of the night was perfect. The kind of chaos that feels right. Ray arguing with Clara about who brought the wrong pie. Someone posted photos online. Christmas at Silas's lodge. The view is insane. Within an hour, they were everywhere. My inbox exploded with tags, mentions, DMs. Around 10, my phone buzzed with a text. From Marcy. Holy crap. That's your place? I stared at it for a second, then typed back, Yep, small Christmas this year. I put the phone down and went back to the living room. Ray was sitting near the fireplace, glass of soda in hand, watching everyone laugh. Look at this, he said, gesturing around. You built something real, kid. Not just money. This. Yeah, I said, leaning back in the chair. And I didn't even need a choir solo to get attention. He chuckled, shaking his head. The snow outside kept falling, thick and quiet. Inside, the room was warm, glowing, alive. I looked around. Family that actually cared, friends who'd seen me fail and still showed up, people eating, laughing, living. For the first time, I wasn't the outsider looking in through the window. I was the one with the house full of people, the one who made space for everyone else. And the best part? My parents were sitting somewhere, staring at their phones, realizing Christmas had finally gone on without them. The next morning, I was still half asleep when my phone started buzzing nonstop. Caller ID, Dad. Figures, I answered. Morning. Morning? His voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You humiliated us, Silas. Everyone's talking about your little Christmas circus. What the hell were you thinking? I sat up, rubbed my eyes. I was thinking about having a nice holiday with people who actually show up. That was our Christmas, he snapped. You stole it. You invited everyone, our family, our friends, without even telling us. Correction, I said, keeping my tone calm. I invited the people you forgot existed. Big difference. In the background, I could hear Mom chiming in, all dramatic as usual. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? Everyone saw those pictures online. Your lodge, your party, even your grandfather. People are calling us asking why we weren't there. I almost laughed. You mean at the place of your deadbeat son who you didn't invite to your Christmas? Yeah, that's crazy. Dad exhaled hard through his nose. You know what? I'm not doing this. Just tell me one thing. How did you even afford all that? Ah, there it was. The real reason for the call. I stood up, walked over to the big window. Snow was still coming down, the mountains glowing in the morning light. Everyone else was asleep. You remember Shield Path? I said casually. Yeah, he said. Your tech thing. What about it? I sold it, I said. For 50 million. Silence. For a full 10 seconds. Then Mom's voice, shaky and high. 50 what? Million, I repeated. With an M. Dad made a choking sound. You're joking. Nope, I said. It's real. You could Google it if you ever Googled anything besides Marcy's law firm. They both started talking at once, voices tripping over each other. Shock turning to something uglier. Mom was the first to say it. We're your family, Silas. That money, it belongs to all of us in a way. Excuse me? Well, we supported you through college, through your... I laughed. Supported me? You mean the years you ignored me, told me to get a real job, and cut me out of every holiday? That kind of support? Don't be ridiculous, Dad said. We're still your parents. You wouldn't even be where you are without us. At that exact moment, Grandpa Frank shuffled into the kitchen, wearing a robe and holding a mug. Who's making all that racket this early? I motioned him over. You're gonna love this, I said, putting the phone on speaker. Mom's voice came through loud and clear. Silas, listen. We're not asking for much. Just something fair, a family share. Grandpa set his mug down and leaned over the phone. You two have some nerve, he growled. Dad? My father said, surprised. Oh, don't dad me, Grandpa snapped. You ignored this boy for years, treated him like a screw-up, and now you're crying because he finally did something without you? You should be ashamed. Mom started stammering. We just... And Marcy, Grandpa cut in. If you're listening to this nonsense, you should be ashamed too. As if on cue, another voice joined in. Marcy, Grandpa, please, it's not like that. Our Christmas looked sad compared to his. Everyone was asking why we weren't invited. Then next time, Grandpa said, his voice sharp but steady, treat him like family before you complain about missing out. Nobody said a word after that. You could practically hear their pride cracking through the speaker. Then Dad muttered something about talking later and hung up. Grandpa leaned back in the chair, grinning. That felt good. Better than coffee, I said. He chuckled. They'll get over it. Or they won't. Either way, you're free of their nonsense now. And he was right. The rest of the day was perfect. The snow outside was thick enough for a snowball war that lasted an hour. Ray and I got destroyed by a bunch of 10-year-olds, but I didn't even care. Inside, the kitchen smelled like pancakes and coffee. That night, I sat by the fire with Grandpa. He stared at the flames and said, I think you finally found your people. Yeah, I said quietly. Took me long enough. He raised his mug. Make them earn your respect, kid. You're worth more than their approval. I nodded. Later, when I checked my phone before bed, there was a new message from Marcy. I'm sorry, Silas. I really am. I've been jealous for years. You took risks, and I just followed what Mom and Dad told me. I didn't see it then. I do now. I read it twice, locked my phone, and set it face down on the nightstand. No reply. Outside, snow kept falling. The fire popped once, then settled. It wasn't revenge, it was freedom. I built something real, not to prove them wrong, but to prove I could stand without them. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. You either be your brother's groomsman or I'll destroy your scholarship, my dad threatened. After my brother married my GF, so I stood up during the vows and read the messages that destroyed their act and ended their empire. Hey Reddit, not really sure how to start this, but let's just say my family had a golden boy, and it wasn't me. I used to think keeping my head down was the smart move, until I found out how deep the lies went. What started as a cheating scandal turned into something way bigger, and I ended up doing what none of them ever thought I could, fighting back quietly. If you asked my dad to describe our family, he'd call us a picture of success. If you asked anyone who actually knew us, they'd probably say we looked like a walking PR stunt. Dad's a lawyer who treats his last name like a brand. Everything he does, his firm, his house, his sons, is about image. He's the kind of guy who straightens the silverware before guests arrive and corrects your grammar mid-sentence. Control is his love language. Mom? She's polite, soft-spoken, the perfect politician's wife without the politician. She acts like she balances him out, but really, she just backs him up. Her favorite phrase is, "Your father just wants what's best for you," right before agreeing with whatever he says. Then there's Sam, my older brother, the golden one, the future of the Hale legacy. If Sam breathes, Dad applauds it. If Sam screws up, it's a learning opportunity. When I get something right, it's finally. Sam's the type who could sell rain to a storm cloud. Charming, confident, a natural liar. He's always had that salesman grin and a tone that made people trust him, even when they shouldn't. Dad used to say, Sam's leadership skills will take him far. Ryan just needs direction. Translation: Sam shines, Ryan follows. Me? I was the quiet one. I worked part-time at a tech shop, studied late, didn't drink, didn't party, didn't play the fake networking game. I preferred results over noise. To my family, that made me boring. To me, that made me free. Then came Jade. We met in law school, same business law class, same sarcasm about professors who thought PowerPoint slides were personality. By then, I was a second year, 2L, on a firm-funded scholarship. One dad's connections technically controlled, even though I'd earned it myself. Jade was ambitious, sharp, and confident without being fake. 3 years together, and she was the first person who made me feel like I wasn't the backup Hale. She'd say things like, "You don't need to be loud to be seen, Ryan." And I believed her. For a while, she actually fit into my life. She even met my family. That's when things started changing. Sam took one look at her and turned into Mr. Charming. At first, it was small stuff, helping her carry plates at dinner, complimenting her hair, jokingly, calling her the smarter Hale girlfriend. I brushed it off. Sam flirts with everyone. That's his thing. But then Jade started dressing up every time we went to family events. Not casual dresses, full effort. Hair, makeup, perfume. And she laughed at everything Sam said. Every single thing. One night, at a dinner my dad hosted for some firm clients, I caught Sam whispering something to her. She giggled and covered her mouth like a teenager. I told myself I was overthinking. I had to be. Because the alternative meant my brother was crossing a line even he wouldn't touch. Over the next few weeks, she started helping him with firm projects. Apparently, Sam was mentoring her because she was interested in corporate law. Yeah, sure. Then came the night I stopped pretending everything was fine. It was a Thursday. Jade said she was staying in to finish a report. I swung by her place after work with her favorite takeout, because I'm the kind of idiot who still tries even when something feels off. The lights were low, laptop open on the coffee table. No sign of her. I set down the food and noticed the screen still glowing. One message notification. It was from Sam. Still thinking about last night? That dress was dangerous. I stared at it, frozen. My stomach didn't drop. My brain didn't explode. I just went quiet. Completely quiet. Then another message popped up. Can't wait to see you again. Don't let Ryan get suspicious. That was it. No excuses left. No more, maybe I'm overreacting. I scrolled up and it got worse. Messages from weeks, maybe months. Flirting, innuendos, hotel names, photos, explicit ones. I shut the laptop before my body did something stupid, like throw it through a wall. I sat on her couch staring at the blank screen, realizing this wasn't just betrayal, it was hierarchy. Dad raised us to believe Sam could take whatever he wanted, and I should be grateful for leftovers. Now he'd taken the one person who actually saw me, and everyone around him, Mom, Dad, maybe even Jade, would call it a misunderstanding. On the drive home, I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. Like someone had just handed me a blueprint of how this family really worked. Dad controlled, Mom excused, Sam took, and I was supposed to stay quiet. They'd built this system for years. They just forgot I was paying attention. The next morning, I decided I was done pretending. I drove straight to Jade's apartment. She opened the door looking half guilty, half annoyed, like I was the one ruining her morning. Ryan, can we not do this right now? She said, pulling her robe tighter. I didn't answer. I walked in, opened her laptop, and turned the screen toward her. The last message from Sam was still there. Don't let Ryan get suspicious. Her face went pale. Then she did what cheaters always do. She played the victim. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said, voice cracking on cue. You're too quiet and boring sometimes. Sam's confident, and I got caught up in it. I almost laughed. Too quiet. That's what they always said about me. Right, I said. You accidentally texted him hotel names for 6 months. Happens to everyone. She tried to grab the laptop, but I pulled it away. Relax. I already backed everything up. Her jaw dropped. You what? Don't worry, I said. I'm not posting anything. Yet. She looked angry now. More embarrassed than sorry. You can't hold this over me, Ryan. Hold it over you, I said. No, Jade. I'm just collecting data. I left before she could respond. By the time I got home, Dad was waiting in his office, sitting behind his desk like a judge. Mom stood off to the side, pretending to tidy papers she'd already stacked 3 times. Sam was leaning against the wall, smug as always. Jade called me, Dad started. She's upset. I'll bet she is, I said, crossing my arms. He gave me that disappointed look he reserved for when I didn't play his game. Ryan, I don't know what you think you saw, But your brother assures me there's been a misunderstanding. Yeah, Sam added, smirking. She came on to me, man. I told her to back off. I stared at him, amazed he could lie that easily. You told her to back off? Before or after the hotel photos? Mom gasped. Dad slammed his hand on the desk. Enough. You will not embarrass this family with wild accusations. Do you understand me? Embarrass the family? I said. You mean tell the truth? He stood up, towering over me like that still worked. You're not ruining your brother's happiness over a girl. Whatever happened, it's in the past. Past? I repeated. It's still happening. Sam smirked again. Not anymore. We're engaged. The room went quiet. My ears rang. Engaged? I said slowly. You mean to the girl you were sneaking around behind my back? Dad stepped in. Ryan, you'll congratulate your brother like a man and be his groomsman, or you'll find out how quickly I can cancel your scholarship. My law scholarship. The one thing I'd earned on my own, except it was funded through our family foundation, which meant he still controlled it. Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to stand at their wedding like a prop? You'll be a groomsman, he said, pointing a finger at me. You'll smile, you'll show respect, and you'll stop this nonsense. I've worked too hard to have you destroy what this family stands for. I nodded slowly. Yeah, Dad. Wouldn't want to ruin the family image. He relaxed, thinking I'd given in. Sam grinned, Mom sighed with relief, and for a split second, they thought I was back under control. But I wasn't. That night, I opened my laptop and got to work. I already had copies of the texts between Sam and Jade, but I needed more. I started digging. A few days later, I stopped by the firm to drop off some papers Dad wanted reviewed. Sam was out meeting a client, which usually meant flirting or bragging somewhere. His office door was open, laptop still on. I shouldn't have looked, except of course I did. On his desktop was a folder labeled Mentorship Notes, probably stuff for his internship portfolio. He'd gotten into the habit of recording mock pitches and client briefings to practice presentation tone, as he liked to brag. Most clips were harmless rehearsals, but one caught my attention right away. Sam's voice. Dean Mitchell loves me, man. I can use Jade to impress him. Show him I can handle corporate strategy. Mitchell practically eats that up. He worships the ground I walk on, Dean Mitchell. The name hit me fast. He was a big deal in law. Respected. Connected to my dad's firm. Sam had interned under him last summer. Apparently, he'd also been using Jade to look impressive in front of the guy. Another clip had him laughing to someone else. I'm learning to manipulate people like Dad does. It's all about control. Keep them grateful. Keep them quiet. And I plugged in my USB drive and copied everything before locking his laptop again. By the time I got home, I had proof that Sam wasn't just a cheater. He was building his entire career on manipulation. Using Jade, using Dad's firm, even using Mitchell's trust. I organized everything. Dates, messages, even timestamps. I saved it to a folder named Insurance. Then I made 3 encrypted backups. One on a USB, one in the cloud, and one hidden in plain sight in my email drafts. If I was going to take them down, I'd do it cleanly. No screaming, no public fights, just facts. A week later, Dad called a family dinner. Jade was there, wearing a ring like she hadn't just detonated my life. She tried smiling at me. I ignored her. Dad announced the engagement like it was a business merger. We're proud of Sam and Jade. This union represents strength, partnership, and the continuation of what we've built. What they'd built. Lies, manipulation, control. Sam looked at me across the table and said, I hope you'll be there for me, little brother. I smiled back. Oh, I'll be there. Everyone relaxed again. They thought the storm had passed, but I wasn't planning to ruin their wedding with drama. I was planning to end the whole system. The perfect image, the fake morals, the lies about family first. I wasn't just going to expose a cheater. I was going to dismantle the entire narrative my dad had spent 20 years selling. I didn't need revenge right then. I needed precision. They wanted a perfect wedding. Fine. But they'd get one they'd never forget. The ceremony was held at this massive countryside venue that looked like a castle pretending to be humble. 300 guests, all smiling like their invitations doubled as tax deductions. It was exactly the kind of show Dad lived for. He'd been bragging about it for weeks. My son's wedding will be the event of the season, he said, which really meant, look at how powerful I am. When I arrived, the staff handed out champagne, and people whispered compliments about Sam and Jade being the perfect couple. I didn't even bother correcting them. The truth was coming anyway. Dean Mitchell was there too, Sam's mentor and the head of his law program. He sat front row, chatting with my dad like they were old friends. I'd only met him twice, but he'd always treated me respectfully, unlike my father's usual colleagues, who looked at me like the backup plan. Sam saw me across the room and grinned like a guy who just won a game he'd rigged himself. "Glad you made it, bro," he said, clapping my shoulder. "You're not still mad, right?" "Mad?" I said. "Nah, wouldn't miss your big day." He didn't notice the USB in my pocket, or the folder on my phone labeled insurance. A few minutes before the ceremony, Dad cornered me near the hallway that led to the bridal suite. He was holding a printed version of my scholarship contract like it was a weapon. "You will smile," he said, face inches from mine. "You will be a groomsman, and you will give the toast I approved. You pull anything today, and that scholarship is gone tomorrow. Do you understand me?" I looked at him and smiled. "Crystal clear!" He glared at me, trying to figure out if I meant it. Then he turned away, straightening his tie. I could see Jade through the half-open door, laughing with her bridesmaids like this was the happiest day of her life. I walked to my spot at the altar, wearing a pale gray suit that Jade had picked out months ago, back when she still pretended to be my girlfriend. She said the color brought out my eyes. Now it just brought out the irony. The guests filled the seats, the music started, and Jade walked down the aisle on her father's arm, glowing like she hadn't burned everything around her to get here. Sam looked at her the way people look at trophies. When the priest started talking about love, loyalty, and commitment, I actually had to stop myself from laughing. I felt Dad's eyes on me, a silent warning from the front row. Mom sat beside him, hands folded tight, pretending this was normal. Then came the line. "If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever, hold your peace." The room went quiet, and I took a step forward. "I do," I said clearly. Every head turned. The sound of chairs shifting echoed through the hall. Jade froze, halfway through a nervous smile. I pulled out my phone. "Before you say I do, Jade, I think we should let everyone know what kind of couple we're celebrating today." Dad's face went red instantly. "Ryan, sit down." But I wasn't listening. I opened the messages, the ones I'd backed up months ago, and read aloud. "Can't believe Ryan actually thinks I care about her," Sam wrote. "I'm just using her to impress Dean Mitchell. The guy practically worships me. Once I'm in his pocket, I can get anything through him." Gasps spread through the room like a wave. Mitchell's head snapped up. I could see the confusion hit his face as I scrolled further. "Jade's perfect for PR," Sam had texted. "Mitchell loves seeing me with a smart woman. Makes me look stable." I heard a few people whispering. Someone near the back started recording on their phone. Dad stood up. "That's enough." I ignored him and kept going. "I told Jade we'd be the power couple everyone envies. Mitchell will probably fast-track me to a partnership after this." Jade took a step forward. "Those are fake," she said loudly, her voice cracking. "He's just jealous." But Dean Mitchell was already standing. "Let me see that," he said. His voice was calm, but the room went dead silent. I walked down the aisle and handed him my phone, along with the USB I'd brought, packed with messages, recordings, and the falsified internship files I'd found on Sam's computer. Mitchell scrolled through the folder for a solid minute, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust. Then he looked at my dad. "Did you know about this?" Dad didn't answer. Mitchell turned to the crowd. "These messages reference academic misconduct, falsified internship reports, name-dropping my mentorship for personal gain, and bragging about unethical use of firm resources." He looked directly at Sam. "You're done. Pending formal review, effective immediately. Your placement and recommendation are suspended. There will be a full investigation of your academic record." The entire room erupted. Guests whispered. Phones went up. Someone gasped loud enough to echo. Jade stumbled backward, makeup streaking down her face. Sam shouted something about lies and manipulation, but nobody was listening. Dean Mitchell handed the phone back to me. "You handled this the right way," he said quietly. "I'll be in touch." Security showed up a few minutes later to escort Sam out after he had an angry meltdown. He started throwing and breaking everything in his path. Jade collapsed onto a chair, sobbing. My mother just sat there, frozen, mascara running. My dad looked like a man watching his entire reputation slide off a cliff. I didn't stick around for the cleanup. I walked straight out the main doors while everyone else tried to process what just happened. Behind me, people were recording, whispering. Outside, the air was cool. The parking lot was full of expensive cars that suddenly felt pointless. I looked back once through the glass doors. The perfect family, falling apart in front of 300 witnesses. They wanted a perfect wedding. They got a public execution instead. By the next morning, the video was everywhere. Someone had filmed the whole thing. My I object moment, the text readings, Dean Mitchell's public takedown of Sam? All of it. TikTok, Twitter, you name it. The caption under one post read, "Guy exposes his cheating brother and destroys a law career during the vows." The clip had over 500,000 views before breakfast. While I was sipping coffee in my apartment, my phone buzzed nonstop. Old classmates, co-workers, even random strangers sent messages like, "You're a legend," or, "Bro, that speech deserves an award." My dad didn't think it was funny. By noon, the firm's social media pages were flooded with comments. People were tagging legal associations, asking why Hale and Partners was employing frauds. Jade's family, old money, the kind who only cared about image, quietly pulled their investment from Dad's firm. And Dean Mitchell? He moved fast. By the end of that same day, he announced an official internal investigation into Sam and forwarded evidence about my father to the State Bar's disciplinary board. Academic misconduct and professional misrepresentation, the email said. It didn't even take 24 hours for things to start unraveling. Dad called me at 10 p.m. I let it ring twice before answering. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he said. His voice was half rage, half panic. "Yeah," I said. "I told the truth." He exhaled hard. "You humiliated your family in front of hundreds of people? The firm is losing clients. Jade's family pulled their funding?" "That's funny," I cut in. "You mean the same family that helped your golden boy cheat his way into law school?" He went quiet for a second. Then, "This isn't the time for pride, Ryan. Fix this. Call Dean Mitchell. Tell him it was all exaggerated." "Why would I do that?" "Because your brother's career is over," he snapped. "Because your mother can't show her face at the country club. Because I've spent 25 years building a firm that you just destroyed." I leaned back in my chair. "Then maybe you should have spent some of those years raising decent people." He hung up. The next day, the firm's name was plastered all over the news. Law student exposed for academic fraud, linked to father's firm. Reporters camped outside the building, clients canceled contracts, and Sam was suspended from his law program pending investigation. I heard Jade lost her job offer too. Apparently, no company wanted to deal with the PR mess that came with being the wedding girl. The whole family went dark online. Mom deleted her Facebook. Sam turned his Instagram private. Dad shut off comments on the firm's website. But the internet doesn't forget. Every few hours, new videos popped up. Memes, edits, even dramatic reenactments of the wedding scene. My personal favorite was one labeled, "How to Nuke Your Brother's Future in Under 3 Minutes." 2 days later, Mom showed up at my apartment. I almost didn't answer the door, but the knocking wouldn't stop. When I opened it, she looked wrecked, "Ryan," she said, voice trembling. "We need to talk." "About what?" "The public execution or the family cover-up?" She winced. "You don't have to be cruel." "I learned from the best," I said. She stepped inside without asking. "Your father is devastated." "Sam? He's not eating, not sleeping. Jade's gone. Everything is falling apart." "Good," I said flatly. Her eyes went wide. "Good? How can you say that? You're destroying your own family." I laughed once. "No, Mom. They destroyed it years ago. I just stopped pretending everything was fine." She clasped her hands like she was praying. "Please, Ryan. Dean Mitchell respects you. If you tell him it was a misunderstanding..." I cut her off. "You mean lie for Sam? Again?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "Do you want your father to lose everything? Maybe he shouldn't have built everything on fraud." She looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore, which was ironic, because this was the first time I'd ever actually been myself. When she realized I wasn't giving in, she left quietly, muttering something about shame and forgiveness. That night, my phone buzzed again, this time with an unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the message. "Ryan, this is Dean Mitchell. I'd like to speak with you when you have a moment." I called him back immediately. "Mr. Hale," he said in his usual calm tone, "I'll be direct. I owe you an apology." "Apology?" I said, surprised. "Yes. I believed the wrong person. Your father and brother presented a very different image to the academic community. You exposed what many of us should have seen sooner." He paused, then continued, "I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to our law program. You'll also receive a research position under my mentorship. No strings attached." For a second, I didn't say anything. I just sat there, staring at the wall, realizing I'd just been handed everything they took from me. When we hung up, I sat there for a long time. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same man my dad used to name drop in every conversation was now the one giving me the opportunity he'd stolen. By the weekend, the firm had officially lost 3 major clients. Dad's partners were quietly withdrawing. Sam was suspended indefinitely from his program. Jade had vanished completely. No posts, no updates, nothing. I packed a small suitcase that Sunday. Just essentials, laptop, clothes, USB drives, everything that mattered. As I zipped it shut, I thought about the years I'd spent being told I was a disappointment. For the first time, that label didn't sting. Because now I wasn't the disappointment. I was the reminder of what they created. Months passed. Long enough for the headlines to fade, but not long enough for anyone to forget. Dad's firm was bleeding money. Lawsuits started rolling in from ex-clients who claimed they'd been misled about credentials and partnerships. The once golden Hale and Partners logo came down from the building one afternoon, replaced by an ugly for lease banner. I saw it on my way to class and had to laugh. Mom's social circle fell apart next. The same people who used to fawn over her at charity events stopped returning calls. Apparently, being married to the fraudulent lawyer wasn't good for image. And Sam, he became an online meme. Someone made a compilation video of his wedding meltdown, him yelling, Jade crying, Mitchell announcing the investigation. It was everywhere. People started calling him the fraudulent groom. There were even t-shirts. His life went down faster than his reputation. He tried to get hired at smaller firms, but everyone knew his name for the wrong reason. Even Jade dumped him eventually. Or maybe he dumped her. Either way, they both lost. She tried reaching out to me first. It started with an email. Ryan, I've made so many mistakes. Sam isn't who I thought he was. I miss the way things used to be. Can we talk? I didn't respond. Then a few texts followed. I'm sorry. I just want to explain. Can we please meet? I blocked her number. I wasn't interested in recycled apologies from people who only realized their mistakes after the lights went off. Around that time, I got a message from Nathan, a family friend who used to work at the firm as a junior partner. We weren't close, but he'd always treated me decently. He asked to meet for coffee, said he had something important. When I showed up, he looked nervous, eyes darting around the cafe like we were in a spy movie. He slid a small flash drive across the table. You didn't get this from me, he said quietly. What is it? Proof, he said. Your dad lied to Dean Mitchell years ago. About you. I frowned. What do you mean, about me? Back when you were applying for internships, Dean Mitchell's firm considered taking you on. Your dad sent them a letter claiming you had mental health issues and weren't reliable under pressure. Said it was best they focus on Sam instead. I sat there, staring at the flash drive. He kept talking. Mitchell never knew you applied again later. Your dad buried every recommendation that didn't favor Sam. He made sure all the attention stayed on your brother. I shouldn't even have this, but I thought you deserved to know. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and left. Back home, I plugged in the drive. There it was, a PDF of a letter on firm letterhead, signed by my father. Ryan Hale struggles with emotional regulation and has demonstrated instability in professional settings. I recommend focusing mentorship resources on his brother, Samuel Hale, whose leadership qualities reflect our firm's standards. I scrolled further. Email threads, meeting notes, memos, all confirming it. He'd been sabotaging me for years. It wasn't about me being too quiet. It was about control. He didn't want two sons succeeding. He wanted one golden child and one scapegoat. Then I opened a new email window, attached the files, and sent them anonymously to the State Bar's Office of Disciplinary Counsel, CCing the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Unit for good measure. No message, no threats, just the truth. A few weeks later, the hammer finally dropped. The board opened a full review of Hale and Partners. They discovered multiple forged recommendations, falsified partnership records, and misuse of client trust funds. Basically, the whole firm was built like a house of cards. When the media broke the story, the headline read, Law firm under investigation after whistleblower evidence surfaces. They didn't name me, but Dad knew. He called once more. I didn't answer. The voicemail was exactly what I expected. No apology, just panic. Ryan, I know it was you. Whatever you think you're doing, you're making a mistake. You're destroying everything this family built. He paused before hanging up. You'll regret this. But I didn't. Because for the first time, the balance was real. Every lie, every cover-up, every time he made me feel small, it all caught up with him. The firm officially shut down 2 months later. A court froze the trust accounts. Several partners were suspended by the bar, and the firm's reputation was in ashes. Mom moved in with her sister out of embarrassment. Sam tried launching some consulting startup that went nowhere. The name Hale used to open doors. Now it got them closed faster. Meanwhile, I was finishing law school under Dean Mitchell's mentorship. Top of my class, full scholarship, new apartment, new life. Every day felt like quiet payback. One afternoon, I walked past the old firm building again. The windows were covered. I stood there for a second, remembering the times I used to walk through those same doors, hoping for approval that never came. Then I turned around and left without looking back. He spent his life building a name. I destroyed it with the truth. 3 years later, that truth had turned into peace. I was living in a quiet apartment overlooking the city, the kind of place that felt like mine for once. No family name on the lease, no expectations hanging over me. I'd built a solid career under Dean Mitchell's mentorship, working at a firm that actually valued honesty over fake handshakes. No drama, no noise, just work, gym, sleep, repeat. Exactly how I liked it. Sam, on the other hand, had become a walking cautionary tale. People still called him the fraudulent groom in the comments. His social media was dead except for one sad photo of a motivational quote from 2 years ago. I didn't hate him. I just stopped caring. Until one Monday morning, when I opened my email and saw the subject line, Whistleblower Report, Ryan Hale involved in file theft and professional sabotage. The email had fake screenshots showing me stealing internal firm data and messages claiming I'd ruined my brother's career out of jealousy. The attachments looked sloppy, but believable enough to cause damage. Within hours, people in the local law community were whispering. Some smaller pages even reposted it with headlines like, Exposed, Rising Lawyer Accused of Corporate Espionage. Dean Mitchell called me into his office that afternoon. He looked calm but serious. I know you didn't do this, Ryan. But even false claims spread fast. We'll get ahead of it. I already know who did it, I said. He raised an eyebrow. You do? Yeah, I said. There's only one person desperate enough to dig this low. That night, I started digging. The fake screenshots were decent but not perfect. Whoever made them reused some of my old email headers, ones I recognized from years ago. That told me the person had access to my old correspondence, which narrowed the list down to one person who used to live in the same house as me, Sam. But I wasn't guessing. I wanted proof. I ran the attachments through a check and found fingerprints you can't fake. The file's properties showed Sam's name, and the firm's mail logs pointed to the IP assigned to his apartment. In other words, the fake came straight from him. Of course it did. He hadn't even bothered to hide it properly. I smiled to myself, not out of joy, just out of disbelief. After everything, he was still trying to win a game I'd already left. The next morning, I printed the reports and brought them straight to the firm's legal team. This came from my brother's device, I said, sliding the documents across the table. I'm guessing this counts as defamation. They skimmed through the data. The lead counsel nodded. It does, and it's airtight. Within 2 days, the firm issued an official statement clearing my name. It included digital evidence showing the forgery's source, and a short line that said, the firm stands fully behind Ryan Hale. The online rumor vanished overnight, replaced by a new headline. Disgraced ex-law student exposed for faking allegations against brother. Sam went silent again. Then, a week later, his lawyer sent a half-hearted email offering mutual confidentiality. Translation, he was scared. The firm declined. They filed for defamation and malicious interference instead. A month later, Sam's lawyer negotiated a settlement. Sam issued a public apology that read like it had been written with a gun to his head. I take full responsibility for circulating false information about my brother. I acted out of anger and regret, and I deeply apologized to Ryan Hale and his firm. It barely made a ripple online, but those who remembered the wedding recognized the name. The comments section lit up with people saying, of course it was him, and dude never learns. Dean Mitchell called me into his office again a few days later. He had that small smile he gets when he's proud, but doesn't want to admit it. You handled this better than most seasoned attorneys, he said. Calm, precise, no drama. Guess I learned from experience, I said. He nodded. That's the thing, Ryan. You've become what your father pretended to be. Composed under pressure, guided by truth. You handled this like a professional, not a victim. I just smiled. Thanks. I don't do victims. Later that night, I sat in my apartment, lights low, laptop open to the final legal notice confirming the case's closure. Sam owed damages and public apology fees. Small price for the lies he tried to spread. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. I leaned back in my chair, looked out at the skyline, and realized something. All those years, they said I was too quiet, too reserved, too soft-spoken to make an impact. Turns out, calm doesn't mean weak. It means patient, strategic, dangerous in silence. They said I was too quiet. Turns out, calm is what buried them. 8 years passed after that whole mess, long enough for my name to stand on its own, separate from theirs. I'd built a clean record, solid clients, a good life. My apartment was quiet, my mornings predictable. No drama, no phone calls, no Hail family updates. Then one Tuesday morning, an email from an unfamiliar address hit my inbox. Subject line, urgent regarding Samuel Hale. For a second, I almost deleted it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked. It was from a hospital in Florida. Mr. Hale, your brother Samuel has been admitted for advanced kidney failure. He listed you as next of kin. He is uninsured and in critical condition. Attached was a scanned document, his admission form, his handwriting messy as ever. I stared at it for a while, unsure whether to laugh or sigh. 8 years of silence, and the next time his name showed up, it was next to the word failure. Still, something in me wanted to confirm it wasn't some elaborate scam. So I called the hospital. The nurse who answered confirmed everything. He'd been living in Central Florida with our grandmother, barely scraping by. His wife had left, and he had a 6-year-old son. His condition is severe, she said. Without treatment, he might not make it another month. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there for a minute. I wasn't angry, just tired. A few days later, I got another email. This one wasn't from the hospital. It was from Sam's address. The subject line, I don't deserve your help, but I'm asking anyway. Ryan, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. I messed up every part of my life. But my son, Evan, doesn't deserve to grow up without a father. If you can help, please. I reread it twice. The words sounded like him. Not the arrogant Sam I knew, but the version that finally realized nobody was clapping anymore. I verified through a contact down in Florida that it was real. The kid existed. The diagnosis checked out. And Sam was broke. No insurance, no job, barely holding on. So I wrote him back. I'll pay for the treatment under one condition. You sign a confession admitting everything. The fake reports, the harassment, the smear campaign, everything. And you agree to no further contact afterward. He didn't reply right away. It took him 3 days. Then another email arrived, short and straight. I'll sign anything. Just help my son. Attached was the confession. Typed, signed, time-stamped. He didn't try to twist words or make excuses. He admitted to the fraud, the lies, even the defamation. I sent it straight to my lawyer and had a trust created under Evan's name to cover the hospital bills and future care. The money went directly to the facility, not through him. I wasn't about to let him mess up even that. A few weeks later, the hospital confirmed the treatment started. Sam didn't try to reach out again. Not a thank you, not a follow-up. Just silence. Maybe he knew he'd said enough for one lifetime. Months passed. One night, while checking emails before bed, I saw a new message from an address I didn't recognize. Evan.Hale06 at. It said, Hi, Mr. Hale. I'm Evan. Dad told me what you did for us. He's getting better. I don't know why you helped when you didn't have to, but I wanted to say thank you. He said you're the smartest person he's ever known. I sat there for a long time, just staring at it. The words were simple, but they hit harder than I expected. I didn't reply right away. I just closed my laptop and leaned back, letting the quiet fill the room again. People had called me heartless over the years. Cold, detached, too calm. Maybe they were right. But in the end, I was the only one who fixed anything. They called me heartless for walking away. Funny how the one they broke was the only one who fixed anything. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Sister sold her house for a dream vacation. Now my parents want her family to move into my place. So I've got this house, right? Been living here for the last 10 years, paying it off bit by bit, and finally I can say it's mine. It's nothing fancy, just a modest 3-bedroom place, but man, it's mine. You know that feeling when you've worked your butt off for something, and you can finally just sit there and think, yeah, I did that? That's where I'm at. I don't have any fancy decor or big backyard, but it's a good spot, comfortable, quiet, and most importantly, it's my space. It's where I can just chill without any stress. Then there's my sister, Jenny. She's 29, married to this guy, Alex, who's 31. They're what you'd call the free spirit types. You know the kind, the ones who are always talking about how everyone else is wasting their life in the grind, working boring 9-to-5s while they live their best life or whatever. They've always been like that, ever since they got together, always planning some big, dramatic escape from the rat race. Honestly, I didn't think they'd ever actually do it. I mean, everyone has these dreams of quitting their job and traveling the world, right? It's like a phase you grow out of when you realize bills exist. But not Jenny and Alex. Oh no, they're the kind of people who actually went through with it. They sold their house, their actual home where their 2 kids, Emma and Lucas, have lived their entire lives, and decided they were going to travel the world for a year. Yeah, you heard that right. They sold everything for a dream vacation, thinking the market was booming and they'd made bank off the sale. They figured they'd use the money to live off, work odd jobs here and there, and stretch it out for a whole year, just going from place to place. So I'm watching this all unfold from my little house, and I'm thinking, okay, cool for them, but also, this is a bad idea. They've got 2 kids to take care of. Emma's 7 and Lucas is 5. And traveling with kids isn't like backpacking through Europe on a whim. There's planning involved. But they just waved it all off, saying they'd figure it out along the way. And I'm like, all right, whatever. It's your life. Fast forward a couple of months, and I'm chilling in my house, probably watching TV or something, when I get a call from Jenny. Now, I haven't heard much from her since they left. Just the occasional Instagram post about how amazing life is, and some pictures of them eating weird food in random places. So I figure this call is going to be one of those, like she's going to brag about how awesome everything is. But the second I pick up, I can tell something's off. Jenny sounds stressed, really stressed, and she starts talking about how things didn't go as planned. Apparently, they blew through their money way faster than they expected. Like, within 2 months, they were pretty much broke. Turns out, traveling the world is expensive. Who knew, right? They stayed in nice places, ate out at restaurants, and just lived it up like they had endless cash. But when you're not working and still spending, that money doesn't last long, especially with 2 kids. Hostels and cheap Airbnbs are all fun and games until you've got 2 tired, hungry kids who need a stable place to crash every night. Now they're stuck. They can't keep traveling because they've got no funds, but they also don't want to settle down and buy another house yet. So, guess what? They ask if they can move in with me. Yep, Jenny, Alex, and their 2 kids, all in my 3-bedroom house. Forget this, 10 months. And here's the kicker. They want to stay rent-free. They didn't even offer to contribute. Just a straight up, hey, can we live with you for almost a year while we figure things out? I've got to admit, I didn't know how to respond at first. I mean, it's my sister, and yeah, I care about her, but this is my house, my space. I didn't work my butt off for 10 years just to let 4 extra people come in and take over the place. Plus, I've got a routine, you know? I like my peace and quiet. I can't even imagine what my house would be like with 2 little kids running around. Not to mention the mess. So I tell her, look, Jenny, I love you guys, but this just isn't gonna work. The house is too small, and I don't want that kind of disruption. I even offered to help them find an affordable rental nearby or pitch in some cash for a couple of months to help them get back on their feet. But no, that wasn't enough. Jenny gets pissed. Like immediately. She starts calling me selfish, saying I don't care about family and that I'm jealous of their adventurous lifestyle. Jealous? Really? Now I'm starting to get mad too. It's not about jealousy or not caring about family. It's about boundaries. I don't owe them a place to live just because they made some dumb decisions and didn't think things through. I get that life doesn't always go as planned, but they sold their house without having a backup plan, and now they want to dump the consequences on me. And here's where it gets even better. After Jenny blows up at me, she gets our parents involved. Now, my parents live in a tiny apartment, so they can't take in Jenny's family. But instead of understanding my side, they start pushing me to let them move in. My mom starts going on about how family helps family, and that I should be more understanding of Jenny and Alex's situation. She tells me I don't understand the value of experiences and that I should be supportive. Supportive? I offered them support. I offered to help them find a rental or cover part of their expenses for a couple of months. But that's not enough. They want the whole package, free rent, my house, and my space for almost a year. And the worst part is, they're not even planning to settle down. They're still talking about taking occasional trips if they find cheap deals. So basically, they want to live in my house, rent-free, while still being free-spirited travelers whenever they feel like it. How does that make any sense? So now, I'm sitting here, trying to figure out how to deal with the fallout. Jenny's not talking to me, my parents are mad at me, and even some of our mutual friends are saying I'm being too harsh. But I don't think I'm in the wrong here. It's not like I'm kicking them when they're down. I offered to help in other ways. I just don't want them living in my house rent-free for 10 months. All right, so after that first awkward phone call with my sister Jenny, I kind of figured things were going to get weird. But I wasn't ready for just how messy it was about to become. I was thinking maybe I could just put my foot down, tell her no, and that'd be the end of it. You know, just draw the line and move on. But nope. Jenny and Alex decided to show up at my house, in person, like a week later. They didn't even give me a heads up, which already had me feeling off. So I'm just doing my usual thing on a Saturday morning, enjoying the quiet, when the doorbell rings. I open it, and there's Jenny standing there with Alex and the kids. They've got this big, hopeful look on their faces like I'm about to save the day or something. Meanwhile, I'm just thinking, oh man, here we go. I mean, I knew what they were going to ask, but I didn't expect it to be like this. Them just rolling up like it's a done deal. Jenny starts off with small talk, asking how I'm doing, how work's going, all that, but I can feel the tension in the air. I know they're not here just to chat. It's like that moment where someone's clearly buttering you up for something big, and I'm just standing there trying to stay polite, but also bracing myself for what's coming. Finally, after what feels like forever, Alex clears his throat and jumps in. He's like, "So, Brian, we've been thinking about what you said on the phone." And then Jenny takes over, because of course she's the one running the show in their relationship. She's all like, "We know you said you didn't think having us live here would work out, but we really believe we can make it work. It's just 10 months. We won't be any trouble. The kids are good, they'll stay out of your way, and we'll keep everything clean." I just stand there for a second, not sure how to respond, because let's be real, there's no way two little kids are going to stay out of my way in a house this size. And the idea that they're just going to magically not disrupt my life? Yeah, that's not happening. I try to stay calm, though. I don't want to blow up right away, so I ask, what's the plan, though? I mean, what happens after the 10 months? Are you going to get another house? What about work? Jenny and Alex glance at each other like they haven't really thought this through. Then Jenny goes, "We're still figuring that part out. We might go back to traveling if things work out. We've been checking for cheap flight deals, and there's a chance we could get back on the road by the end of the year. We just need a place to regroup, you know? Somewhere to stay while we figure out our next move." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So not only do they want to crash at my place for 10 months, but they're also still talking about taking more trips? Like, really? You're broke. You've got two kids, and your big plan is to keep living this fantasy life where you're just floating around from place to place. I didn't even know what to say. I mean, where's the logic in that? So I try to be as polite as possible, and I tell them, "Look, I understand you guys are in a tough spot, but I'm really not comfortable with this. It's not about not wanting to help you out. It's just that my house isn't set up for that. I've got my own routine, and honestly, I don't think having you all here for 10 months would work for anyone. The house is too small, and there's just not enough space." That's when Jenny's face changes. She goes from hopeful to pissed in about 2 seconds flat. "Are you serious?" she says, crossing her arms. "We're family, Brian. Family helps each other out. You've got all this space, and it's just you living here. What's the big deal?" Now I'm starting to get frustrated. I mean, I get it, they're stressed, but this whole thing is starting to feel like they think they're entitled to my space just because we share the same blood. I try to stay calm and explain, "It's not just about space, Jenny. It's about my life, too. I've worked really hard to get this house, and I need my own peace and quiet. I'm happy to help you in other ways, but having you all live here for almost a year, I just don't see that working." Alex finally jumps in, probably sensing that things are getting heated. He's trying to play peacemaker, saying, "Maybe we can work something out. What if we helped around the house? We could do chores, cook meals, whatever you need, and we'll be out during the day. You won't even notice we're here." But here's the thing. Of course I'd notice. 4 extra people living in my house? Yeah, I'm definitely going to notice. Plus, the idea of them being out during the day doesn't make any sense. They've got 2 small kids. Where are they even going to go? They're broke. It's not like they can afford to just take the kids on daily outings. I shake my head and say, "I appreciate the offer, but no. I just can't do it. I'm sorry." And that's when Jenny loses it. She starts ranting about how I've always been stingy and how I don't understand what it means to really live. She says I've never taken any risks, that I'm just a boring guy with a boring life, and that I'm probably jealous of their adventurous lifestyle. Yeah, she went there. Now I'm pissed. But I try not to let it show. I just say, "Jenny, this isn't about me being jealous or anything like that. It's about boundaries. You guys made your choice to sell your house and live this lifestyle. That's fine, but now you're asking me to take responsibility for it, and that's not fair." She's not having it. "We wouldn't be asking if we had any other option. You think we want to be here begging for help? No. But this is what family does, Brian. They help each other out when things get tough. I thought you, of all people, would get that." At this point, Alex just looks uncomfortable. He's not saying much anymore, just staring at the floor while Jenny continues to rant about how I'm selfish and heartless. She's talking about how they're inspired by their travels and how they don't want to settle for the typical suburban life. And all I can think is, yeah, but you need money for all of that, don't you? Finally, I just say, "Look, I'm sorry, but my answer is still no. I can't have you guys living here. It's just not going to work." They storm out after that, Jenny muttering something about how they'll figure it out without my help. And honestly, I'm relieved. I didn't want to keep arguing, but I can already tell this isn't the end of it. And yeah, it wasn't, because after they left, things escalated way more than I expected. Update 1. So after Jenny and Alex stormed out of my place, I thought that was the end of it. You know, like maybe they'd cool off, come to their senses, and realize that they're the ones who screwed up. But man, was I wrong. A couple of days later, the real fallout began. I'm sitting at home, enjoying my usual routine, when I get a call from my mom. Now, normally when my mom calls, it's just to check in or ask me if I've been eating enough vegetables. Seriously. But I could tell right away that this call wasn't going to be one of those. She starts off with, "Brian, I need to talk to you about Jenny." And that's when I know I'm in for a ride. Apparently, Jenny went straight to our parents after leaving my house. She gave them her whole sob story about how I refused to help them when they were down and out, and of course, she framed it in a way that made me look like the bad guy. My mom's voice is all disappointed, like I kicked a puppy or something, and she goes, "I don't understand why you wouldn't help your sister, Brian. They're in a tough spot, and family's supposed to help each other." I try to keep calm, but inside I'm already annoyed. I explained to her what really happened, how I offered to help them find a rental, even give them some money to get back on their feet, but they just wanted to move in with me for 10 months, rent-free. I tell her how their whole plan was ridiculous, how they blew all their money without thinking things through, and now they expect me to bail them out. But my mom, of course, doesn't see it that way. "They made a mistake, Brian, but they're still family. You have the space. It wouldn't be forever, just long enough for them to figure things out." Here's the thing, though. My mom's got this way of guilting you without even meaning to. She's not mean or anything, but she's always dropping these little comments that make you feel like you're failing at being a good son or brother. It's exhausting. But this time, I wasn't having it. I told her straight up, "Mom, I'm not doing it. I love Jenny, but she and Alex need to take responsibility for their choices. It's not my job to let them crash at my place because they didn't plan." She doesn't like that answer, but she lets it go, for now. I think we're done with the conversation, but oh no, it's just getting started. Because the next day, my dad calls. Now, my dad's a different story. He's not the guilt trip type. He's more the tough love type, which means when he's mad, you hear about it. He gets straight to the point, no sugarcoating. "Brian," he says, "I hear you've been giving your sister a hard time." I try to explain myself again, but he cuts me off, going on about how I'm being selfish and how I've always been the one who has it easy. Yeah, right. Like working my butt off for 10 years to pay off this house is easy. He starts ranting about how Jenny's always been the one taking risks, living her life to the fullest, and I'm just sitting here comfortable, not doing anything exciting. He's basically saying I'm being a coward for not letting them stay, like I'm some kind of stick in the mud who doesn't understand what it's like to really live. At this point, I'm getting heated. I tell him, "Dad, this isn't about being adventurous or not. It's about them making a bad decision and expecting me to clean it up. I worked hard for this house, and I'm not going to let them come in and take advantage of that." But he's not hearing it. He keeps going on about how I'm the one who's in the position to help, and how I'm failing as a brother by not stepping up. It's like he's taking everything Jenny said and running with it, making me out to be the bad guy in this whole situation. And honestly, that hurts. I've always been the responsible one in the family, the one who's worked hard, kept my head down, and did what I needed to do. But now it feels like none of that matters. After that call, I'm fuming. I feel like I'm getting attacked from all sides. My parents are both mad at me, and Jenny's probably out there telling everyone I'm a heartless jerk. And guess what? That's exactly what's happening. A few hours later, I get a message from one of our mutual friends. Let's call him Tom. Tom's a good guy, but he's also friends with Jenny, so he's heard her side of the story. He texts me, "Hey man, what's going on with you and Jenny? She says you're not letting her family stay with you even though they're in trouble." I explain my side to him, how it's not that simple, how they're asking for way too much, and how I've already offered other ways to help. And Tom, being the reasonable guy he is, listens. But then he hits me with, "Yeah, but it's just for a little while, right? You could tough it out for 10 months. It's family, dude." And now I'm just done. It's like everyone's forgotten that I have a right to say no. Like my house isn't even mine anymore. It's just a resource that everyone thinks they're entitled to. I'm frustrated because no matter how I explain it, everyone seems to think I'm being unreasonable. They all keep acting like it's no big deal for me to let a whole family move in and turn my life upside down for almost a year. Then the final blow comes when Jenny herself texts me. It's not a long message, but it hits hard. She just says, "I can't believe you've turned your back on us. We really needed you." Now I'm sitting there staring at my phone, feeling torn. Part of me feels guilty, Like maybe I should have just given in to avoid all this drama. But another part of me is still standing firm. I know I'm not in the wrong here. It's not my fault they made bad choices, and it's not fair for them to dump their problems on me just because I have a house. Still, the guilt is eating away at me, and I'm starting to wonder if I could have handled things differently. Maybe I should have been softer in my response. Maybe I should have been more understanding. But at the same time, I know that giving in would have just enabled them to keep making these reckless decisions, thinking they can always rely on someone else to fix things. So, yeah, now I'm stuck. My parents are mad at me, Jenny's pissed, and even some of our friends are questioning whether I did the right thing. And me? I'm just trying to hold on to the fact that I set a boundary for myself, even though it feels like the whole world is telling me I'm wrong for doing it. But this is far from over, because as much as I want to just walk away from all the drama, Jenny isn't done yet. Update 2. All right, so after all the phone calls and texts, I'm thinking maybe things will just blow over if I ignore it for a bit. Maybe Jenny and my parents will calm down, realize I'm not the bad guy here, and we can all move on. But no, things didn't settle down. They escalated. Big time. It starts with my mom. She's still trying to play the mediator, calling me every couple of days, always saying, "Brian, you've got to help your sister. You don't know what it's like to be in her shoes. She's struggling. She's got kids." It's the same thing over and over. And every time I have to remind her that it's not about me not wanting to help. It's about how much they're asking. It's not like they're in danger of being homeless on the street. I offered help in other ways, but apparently nothing I say seems to get through. Then one evening, I get a knock on my door. It's Jenny and Alex. No text or call beforehand, just showed up like everything's normal. I open the door, and there they are, standing there with these tired, desperate looks on their faces, the kids holding onto Jenny's legs. I can tell right away this is about to be awkward. Jenny's holding some papers in her hand, and I'm already feeling that sinking feeling in my stomach, like I'm about to be dragged into something bigger than I expected. Jenny doesn't waste any time. "Brian, we need you to reconsider. This is serious. We've looked everywhere, and there's nowhere affordable for us to stay. The rentals are too expensive, and we don't have the money to even put down a deposit." She waves the papers in front of me. They're printouts of apartment listings, most of them crossed out with red ink. I glance at them for a second, but I'm already thinking about how I'm going to respond. I'm not in the mood to argue, but it's clear they're not taking no for an answer. Before I can say anything, Alex speaks up, and this time, he's not the calm, quiet guy from before. He's frustrated, almost angry. "We've tried everything, Brian. We're out of options. You've got this house all to yourself, and you're just sitting on it while we're struggling. You really can't let us stay for a little while?" Now, I'm getting irritated. I've already had this conversation a dozen times, and every time I say no, they just keep pushing. So I say, "I've told you guys before, I'm not comfortable with having 4 extra people in my house for nearly a year. I offered to help you find something else. I even offered money, but you're not listening. I can't let you move in. That's final." But Jenny, she's not backing down this time. She steps closer, and now her voice is shaking, like she's on the verge of tears. "Brian, we have nowhere else to go. The kids are exhausted. We're exhausted. We're not asking for much, just a roof over our heads for a little while. We'll pay you back when we get back on our feet. Please, you're our last hope." I look at the kids, Emma and Lucas, and they're just standing there looking confused. They probably don't understand what's going on, and honestly, that makes me feel like crap. It's not their fault their parents made bad choices. But I can't let that guilt trip me into making a decision I'm going to regret. I've got to stand firm, or else this whole situation is going to turn my life upside down. So, I take a deep breath and say, "I'm sorry, but I can't. I know it's hard, but this isn't the answer. You need to find another solution." And that's when Jenny snaps. She goes from sad to furious in a split second. "You're unbelievable," she yells, her voice echoing in the hallway. "You're just sitting here, living comfortably, while your own family is suffering. I can't believe how heartless you've become. You've changed, Brian. You're not the brother I grew up with." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I'm too angry to let them sink in. I fire back, "I haven't changed. You're the one who's acting entitled, thinking you can just show up and expect me to bail you out because you didn't plan ahead. I didn't make this mess. You did, and now you want me to fix it for you. That's not how this works." The argument spirals from there. Alex jumps in saying I've always been the selfish one in the family, that I've never been there for them when they needed me. He's bringing up stuff from years ago, random things that don't even matter anymore, like how I didn't lend him money for some side business idea he had back in the day. It's like they've been holding on to all this resentment, waiting for the perfect moment to throw it in my face. At this point, we're all shouting over each other and the kids are crying. It's a disaster. I'm standing in my own doorway getting accused of being the worst brother on the planet, and all I can think is, how did it get to this? Finally, I just say, enough. This is my house and I've made my decision. I'm not changing my mind. Now, I think you need to leave. Jenny looks at me like she can't believe what she's hearing. She opens her mouth to say something, but then she just shakes her head, grabs the kids, and storms off. Alex follows behind her, glaring at me like I'm the devil or something. As they walk away, I feel a weird mix of anger, guilt, and relief. I know I did the right thing by standing my ground, but it still sucks that it had to come to this. I watch them get into their car and drive off, and for a minute, I just stand there, wondering what's going to happen next. I can't help but think that this isn't the end of it, that there's more drama on the way. And guess what? I was right. Because later that night, my phone blows up with messages from family members. Turns out, Jenny went full-on drama mode and told everyone what happened. She's making it sound like I kicked them out into the streets, like they've got nowhere to go, and I'm sitting here laughing about it. My aunt, my cousins, everyone is texting me, saying stuff like, "How could you do this to Jenny and the kids? You've got a big house and they just need a place to stay." It's like they've all bought into this story that I'm some kind of villain hoarding my house while my sister suffers, and no matter how many times I try to explain my side, no one's listening. They're all just repeating the same thing. Family helps family. By the end of the night, I'm exhausted. I've spent hours defending myself, but it feels like no one cares. Jenny's managed to turn everyone against me, and now I'm the bad guy in this whole mess. But here's the thing. I'm still not budging. I'm not going to let them guilt me into doing something that's going to make my life miserable. I know I did the right thing, even if no one else sees it that way. I just have to figure out how to survive the fallout. Update 3. So after the whole family explosion and the messages coming at me from all angles, I was ready to just disconnect for a while, like turn my phone off, lock the doors, and wait for the storm to pass. But no, of course, things weren't going to calm down. If anything, they were about to hit a whole new level of ridiculous. A couple of days go by, and I haven't heard directly from Jenny or Alex, which I guess should have been a relief, but honestly, it made me feel like something big was brewing. You know that quiet before a big argument? That's what it felt like. I could just tell that they weren't done with me yet. Sure enough, one morning I wake up to find this massive post on Facebook that Jenny wrote. And of course, it's public, so everyone and their dog can see it. She's going off about how some people in the family, obviously me, have abandoned her in her time of need, how she and her kids are basically one step away from being homeless, and how all they wanted was a little support from someone who's in a position of privilege. The post is full of dramatic language, talking about how certain family members are selfish and don't understand the importance of helping each other out when things get tough. And yeah, the comment section, it's a total mess. People are jumping in, saying how heartless it is to turn away family, how they can't believe someone would do that to their own sister. I'm reading all this and just feeling my blood boil because these people don't even know half the story. They're just eating up whatever Jenny is feeding them, and suddenly I'm public enemy number one. What's worse is that a bunch of our extended family is in the comments too. My aunt, who I haven't spoken to in years, is chiming in with, "I always knew Brian was selfish. Like this is some known fact about me." My cousins are sharing the post and suddenly I'm getting notifications left and right about how I need to step up and do the right thing. At this point, I'm fuming. I try to calm down and think rationally, but the more I scroll through the comments, the angrier I get. It's like no matter how much I've explained my side to people, Jenny's managed to twist the story so that I look like the villain. And honestly, it's working. I'm losing the public battle here. So I make a decision. I'm not usually the type to air my dirty laundry online, but this has gone too far. If Jenny's going to drag me through the mud on Facebook, I'm going to set the record straight. I type out a long post in response, explaining my side of the story, how I offered to help Jenny and Alex in other ways, how they're the ones who demanded to live rent-free for nearly a year, and how I simply can't accommodate them because it's unreasonable. I mention that they've been irresponsible with their money, that they've been trying to guilt-trip me into giving up my house, and how this whole situation is their fault, not mine. I hit post and wait. And man, did the fireworks start. Immediately, people are commenting on my post, some siding with me saying it's not my responsibility to take in Jenny and her family. Others, of course, are still backing Jenny, saying I'm being too harsh and that family should stick together no matter what. It's turning into this full-blown argument in the comments section, with people going back and forth, defending one side or the other. Jenny, of course, sees my post and flips out. She starts messaging me directly, calling me every name in the book, selfish, heartless, arrogant. She says I'm destroying the family, and that she can't believe I would embarrass her like this in front of everyone. The irony of her saying that after she dragged me publicly first is just too much. I try to keep my cool and respond calmly. I tell her that she left me no choice, that I had to defend myself after she blasted me on Facebook. But she's not hearing any of it. She's too wrapped up in her own narrative, convinced that she's the victim here. Eventually, she blocks me on Facebook like we're teenagers or something, which is honestly fine by me. Less drama I have to deal with. But just when I think things might finally start to die down, I get a call from my dad. Here we go again, right? He's not yelling this time, but his voice is low and serious, which is worse in a way. He's disappointed. He says he saw the whole thing on Facebook, and he's upset that I took it public. He's mad that I didn't just handle it privately, and that now the whole family is divided. I can tell he's blaming me for making the situation worse, but I try to explain that I was backed into a corner, that Jenny started this whole thing by attacking me first. But no matter what I say, he's not happy. He starts talking about how I need to make things right, how family is the most important thing, and how it's not too late to offer Jenny and Alex a place to stay. He says if I do that, maybe things can go back to normal. And here's where I finally snap. I tell him, Dad, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to let them live with me, and I'm done apologizing for it. I've done nothing wrong. They made their choices, and now they have to deal with the consequences. I'm not their safety net, and it's not my job to fix their problems. He goes quiet for a moment, and I can tell he's shocked. I don't usually stand up to him like this, but I'm done. I'm not going to let them guilt me into doing something I don't want to do just to keep the peace. Finally, he sighs and says, I hope you know what you're doing, Brian. Then he hangs up. After that, things go quiet. Jenny still blocked me on social media, and my parents aren't really talking to me either. It feels like the whole family is in this weird, tense standoff, waiting for someone to make the next move. But here's the thing. I'm not making the next move. I've done my part. I've stood my ground, and I'm not backing down. It sucks that things had to turn out this way. I never wanted to fight with my family, but at the same time, I know I did the right thing. I set a boundary, and I stuck to it, even when it felt like the whole world was against me. And yeah, maybe the family dynamic is messed up now, and maybe things won't go back to the way they were. But honestly, I'm okay with that. Because at least I know I'm living on my own terms in my own house without anyone trying to guilt me into giving that up. And that for me is worth all the drama in the world. My brother destroyed my research PC 1 week before graduation. My parents laughed at my tears. They had no idea that moment would end our family forever. I'm Ryan, 32 years old now, and the sound of my life falling apart didn't come with a scream or a dramatic crash. It sounded like a crunch, a wet electric crunch that I can still hear crystal clear when I close my eyes at night. Before I tell you how I ended up buying my parents' foreclosure property at auction and literally kicking them off the lawn they used to own, let me take you back to the exact moment I realized I didn't have a family. I had hostages, and I'd been playing hostage my entire life. Growing up, I was the practice kid. My brother Travis came along 4 years after me, and from that moment on, I became invisible. Travis was the golden child who could do no wrong. When Travis broke my stuff, Mom said boys will be boys. When I got upset, I was too sensitive. When Travis failed classes, they hired tutors. When I struggled, I wasn't trying hard enough. The pattern never changed. By high school, I'd learned my place. I paid for everything myself while Travis got everything handed to him. I worked 3 jobs to pay for college. Overnight diner shifts scrubbing floors, weekend landscaping hauling mulch, evening tutoring sessions. Took out loans I'd be paying off until I was 40. Bought used textbooks. Ate ramen most nights. Travis was on his 3rd attempt at community college, fully funded by Mom and Dad. He kept changing majors and launching failed schemes. Protein shakes, day trading, crypto, drop shipping. None of it worked, but they kept funding the dreams. But I made it through. Got my bachelor's in landscape architecture. My professors said I had real talent. Got accepted into a competitive master's program. Only took 15 students per year. I saved for 3 years to build a computer. Researched every component. Spent a weekend assembling it myself. When it booted up successfully, I actually teared up. This was mine. Something I'd built with my own money. I spent 6 months on my thesis. Sustainable urban park design for low-income neighborhoods. Native plants, accessible pathways, green infrastructure, community spaces. Worked every night after my shifts until dawn. CAD drawings, 3D renders, technical specs, cost analyses. The Sterling competition was my golden ticket, $15,000 prize, and guaranteed interviews at top firms. My thesis advisor said I had a real shot at first place. 1 week until my thesis defense. 1 week until graduation. 1 week until competition submission. Everything was ready. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday in late April. I got home from class and immediately smelled it. Burning electronics and cheap soda. The neon green kind Travis lived on. My stomach dropped. I opened my apartment door. Travis stood in my bedroom holding an aluminum baseball bat. My custom-built PC tower was knocked over. The glass panel shattered. But the worst part was the neon green soda dripping from the ventilation grate, pooling inside the case. I could hear the circuits frying. Pop. Crackle. Sizzle. The smell of burning plastic filled the room. Travis tossed the bat onto my bed, wiped his hands on his jeans, looked satisfied. My legs went weak. Inside that hard drive was 6 months of work. My entire thesis. Hundreds of CAD drawings. 3D renders I'd perfected over countless hours. Technical specs. Cost analyses. Everything for the Sterling competition. All drowning in soda. I whispered one word. Travis shrugged. Said he'd told me he needed a ride to the mall for his date with Brittany. I said I was busy. Well, now I wasn't busy. Problem solved. He smiled that cold smile that said he knew he'd get away with it. I walked forward slowly. My boots crunched on the glass fragments covering my floor. I reached out to touch the monitor. It was bent at a 45-degree angle where the bat had connected. The screen was completely black. Dead. I pressed the power button on the tower even though I knew it was pointless. Nothing happened. No lights, no fans, no startup sounds. Just silence and the smell of burnt circuits. Everything was dead. Mom's voice drifted in from my living room. Sounded cheerful and casual, like she'd just stopped by for a friendly visit. She and Dad walked into my room. They had emergency keys to my apartment. I'd given them copies years ago in case something happened. A real emergency. Apparently Travis needing a ride to impress some girl qualified as an emergency in their minds. Mom looked at the destroyed computer, then at Travis holding the bat, then at me standing there in shock. I waited for the scream, waited for her to explode at Travis, waited for her to demand answers, to yell, to grab him by the ear like she used to when we were kids, and he'd done something wrong. Instead, she sighed. This long, exasperated sigh like I was the one being unreasonable. She said my name in that exhausted tone I'd heard my entire life, the tone that meant I was about to be the problem again. Told me not to look so tragic. It was just a toy. Just a toy. 3 years of saving, 6 months of work, my entire future. Just a toy. I choked out the words. Told her that machine cost $3,000. That my thesis was on there. That my graduation literally depended on this. That the competition submission was due in 8 days, and everything was on that hard drive. Dad squeezed into the room behind Mom. He was a big guy. Took up space. He looked at the destroyed computer and actually chuckled. That low, rumbling chuckle that used to make me feel safe when I was little. Now it just made my skin crawl. Said $3,000 for a video game box. Told Mom he'd been right all along that I wasted my money. If I'd saved for a house down payment or started a college fund for my future kids instead of playing games, I wouldn't be crying right now. Called me immature, short-sighted. I tried to stay calm. Tried to explain one more time that it wasn't for games. That I was an architect. That I drew buildings. Designed public spaces. That this machine was my professional tool. That I needed it to do my actual job. The job I'd spent 6 years training for. Travis grabbed a bag of chips from my shelf. Some barbecue ones. Ripped it open and shoved a handful in his mouth. Crunched loudly while looking me dead in the eyes. Said I drew pretty pictures. That he was the one with real business ideas. Real money-making plans. Then he turned to Mom and asked if she'd transferred the money for his latest crypto investment. Said he needed to buy the dip before it was too late. Mom's entire face transformed. Went from annoyed to adoring in half a second. Her eyes lit up. She smiled at Travis like he'd just told her he was curing cancer. Said yes. She'd sent the money that morning. Told him to be careful. Said they believed in him. That he was going to make it big one day. I just stared at them. All three of them standing in my destroyed room like this was totally normal. My entire livelihood was literally smoking on the desk. The hard drive that contained 6 months of sleepless work was drowning in soda because my 29-year-old brother had thrown a toddler tantrum, and they were standing there discussing his crypto portfolio like I didn't exist. I said it clearly, enunciated every word, told them Travis broke it on purpose, poured soda on it because I wouldn't drive him around. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate destruction of property. Mom waved her hand dismissively, said Travis told her it slipped, that he'd been holding his soda and accidentally knocked it over, Asked why I always assumed the worst about my brother. Said I'd been jealous of him since we were kids and it was ugly. Really ugly. Time to grow up. Jealous? I pointed at the wreckage with a shaking hand. Told her this was a crime. Actual destruction of property. That bat didn't just fall from the sky. The glass didn't shatter itself. The soda didn't pour itself into the ventilation grate. Mom's voice went sharp. Told me to stop being so dramatic. Said I was tearing this family apart over a piece of metal. That family comes first. Always. No matter what. That I needed to remember that. Dad stepped closer and put his hand on my shoulder. It felt like a clamp. Heavy and controlling. Told me they'd buy me a notebook. A nice paper one from the office supply store. Maybe a few pencils. Said maybe I should have printed my homework out like people used to do back in his day. That working by hand builds character. Makes you appreciate things more. Travis snorted through his mouthful of chips. Sprayed crumbs everywhere. Told me not to act like I was the only one who mattered. Said the world didn't revolve around me. That maybe this was good for me. Teach me some humility. Something inside me snapped. But it wasn't loud. Wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Like a cable being cut. Like power being severed from a machine. I looked at them. Really looked at them. Saw Mom clutching her purse with both hands, her eyes constantly darting to Travis to make sure he was okay. Saw Dad standing there with his chest puffed out, refusing to understand anything that didn't involve manual labor or sports scores. Saw Travis smirking while eating my food in my destroyed room, secure in the knowledge that he could burn my apartment down, and they'd blame me for having flammable curtains. I realized something in that moment. Something I should have realized years ago. I didn't have parents. I had Travis's fan club, his cheerleading squad, and I was just the janitor they kept around to clean up the mess. The scapegoat they blamed when things went wrong. The rage that had been building in my chest suddenly cooled, turned to ice. I felt calm. Dangerously calm. The kind of calm that comes right before you make a life-changing decision. I said it. 2 words. Get out. The room went completely silent. Mom looked offended. Actually offended. Said they'd driven all the way over here to visit me. That they'd brought, well, they were going to bring lasagna, but they'd forgotten it at home. But still, the thought counted. I repeated myself. Get out. Leave my emergency key on the counter. Get out of my apartment right now. Dad's face turned red, stepped forward into my space. Said I was kicking my own mother out? Over a computer? After everything they'd done for me over the years? After they'd raised me and fed me and put a roof over my head? This was how I repaid them? I held eye contact, didn't blink, told him they hadn't done anything for me, reminded him they paid for Travis's car, paid for his 3 failed attempts at college, paid for his latest business scheme. I'd worked 3 jobs to pay my own tuition. I'd gone hungry to save money. I'd scrubbed toilets at 2 a.m. to afford textbooks. I'd built this computer with money I made myself, money I'd earned with my own sweat and time. And now Travis had destroyed it because I wouldn't be his personal chauffeur. Told them they had 30 seconds to leave or I was calling the police and pressing charges for vandalism, for breaking and entering since they'd let themselves in without permission, for destruction of property. Travis's smile finally faltered. His eyes went wide. Said I wouldn't, that I was bluffing. Told Mom to tell me I wouldn't actually do it. Mom looked at my face. Really looked at me. Maybe she saw something she hadn't seen before. Maybe she saw that I'd changed. That I wasn't the scared kid who'd take their abuse anymore. That I'd finally had enough. She spat the word fine. Said if I wanted to choose a machine over my own flesh and blood, go ahead. But not to expect them to come running when I was lonely and miserable. That I was making a huge mistake. That I'd regret this. She grabbed Travis's arm and pulled him toward the door. Snatched the emergency key from her purse and slammed it down on my kitchen counter hard enough that I heard it bounce. Told Travis his brother was having a tantrum and they were leaving. They shuffled out. Dad muttered something under his breath about the ungrateful generation and kids these days. Travis shot me one last glare over his shoulder, but there was something else in his eyes too. Fear. Real fear. Like he'd finally realized I might actually follow through. The door slammed shut. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my neighbor's TV through the wall. Could hear traffic outside my window. Could hear my own breathing. But inside my apartment, the silence pressed down like a weight. I sank to the floor right there in my doorway. Put my back against the wall. Put my head in my hands. The smell of burnt electronics was overwhelming. Made me nauseous. I wanted to scream. Wanted to punch the wall. Wanted to throw something. But I was too tired. Too devastated. 6 months of work. Gone. My thesis defense was in 7 days. The competition deadline was in 8. I was done. Finished. Years of work and sacrifice all destroyed because my brother was a spoiled child in a grown man's body. Then a thought hit me. I scrambled to my feet, nearly slipped on the glass shards, dropped to my knees and crawled under the desk, shoving aside the sticky cables and destroyed components. I'd hidden something under there. A failsafe, insurance, a small ruggedized USB drive, one of those heavy-duty ones meant for construction sites and outdoor work. I'd velcroed it to the underside of the desk frame where nobody would see it. A backup location I'd never told anyone about. My hands shook as I felt for it. Please be there. Please be there. Plastic. Cool, hard plastic. I ripped it off the Velcro strips and held it up to the light. The drive was dry, completely intact. No soda damage. No physical damage. Perfect. I'd been backing up my thesis every single night before bed. Old habit from years of Travis breaking my stuff when we were kids. I'd learned early to always have a backup of anything important, to never trust that something would be safe even in my own room. I crawled out from under the desk, still holding that drive like it was the Holy Grail. Everything was on here. Every CAD drawing, every render, every document, every calculation. 6 months of work, all of it safe. Travis didn't win. I started laughing. It came out manic, borderline hysterical, echoed in my empty apartment. Travis destroyed a $3,000 machine and thought he'd ruined my life, but he hadn't. All he'd done was show me exactly who he was, who they all were, and given me the final push I needed to cut them out completely. The next morning, I showed up at the university computer lab when it opened at 7 a.m., signed up for a workstation, plugged in my backup drive. Everything loaded perfectly. I spent the next 7 days working 18-hour stretches, only left to use the bathroom and grab vending machine food. The lab staff knew me by day 3, brought me coffee without asking, told me to take care of myself. I refined every last detail of the thesis, tweaked the presentation boards, practiced my defense presentation until I could recite it from memory. Barely slept. When I did sleep, it was for 2-hour power naps with my head on the desk. Ran entirely on coffee and spite, and the image of my family standing in my destroyed room, acting like I was the problem. The thesis defense went perfectly. I mean perfectly. My committee asked tough questions, and I had answers ready. The 3D renders drew actual gasps when I showed the seasonal variations. One professor told me it was the most thorough sustainability analysis she'd seen from a graduate student. Another said my approach to accessible design should be the standard the program teaches. The committee chair said I'd set a new bar for the program. I graduated with honors, with distinction, got offers from 2 landscape architecture firms before I even walked across the stage in my cap and gown. Real offers with actual salaries and benefits, and room for growth. But standing there in my graduation robe, looking out at the audience of families cheering for their kids, I noticed the empty seats where my parents should have been, where Travis should have been. For about 3 seconds it hurt. Then I remembered them in my room. Remembered Mom calling my $3,000 professional tool a toy. Remembered Dad laughing at my pain. Remembered Travis smirking while he destroyed 6 months of my work. The hurt turned into something else. Relief. Freedom. They weren't there because I hadn't invited them. Hadn't even told them graduation was happening. They didn't deserve to be there. I took a job at Hartwell Design Group. Mid-level position. $65,000 salary, which felt like a fortune after years of scraping by. Good benefits. Retirement match. Actual paid time off. Started working on commercial projects. City parks. Community centers. Residential developments. I was good at my work. Better than good. Within 6 months, I got promoted to senior designer. Within a year, I was leading projects. Within 2 years, I was pulling in 6 figures. My boss told me I had instincts most designers took a decade to develop. That I understood how people actually used spaces instead of just making them look pretty. I won the Sterling competition on my first try. First place. $15,000 prize, and my design featured in every industry magazine. Firms I'd admired for years were suddenly reaching out, asking if I was interested in partnership tracks. I never called my parents. They never called me. Complete radio silence for 3.5 years. It was like we'd mutually agreed to erase each other. And honestly, I slept better than I had in my entire life. No more Sunday dinners where I was the punching bag. No more guilt trips about not helping Travis enough. No more being compared to my brother and found lacking. Just peace. I dated. Had relationships. Eventually met a woman named Natalie who worked in graphic design. Smart. Independent. Had her own goals and didn't need me to complete her. We got serious. Moved in together after a year. Adopted a rescue dog. Life was good. Better than good. Stable. Healthy. Normal. Then one night, 3.5 years after I'd kicked my family out of my apartment, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. It was my grandfather, my dad's father. We'd been close when I was a kid. He used to take me fishing, taught me how to use a table saw in his workshop, always slipped me $20 when mom wasn't looking. But after the blow up with my parents, I'd lost touch with most of the extended family. Dad had probably told everyone I was crazy or unstable or whatever story made him look good. Grandpa's voice sounded old on the phone, tired in a way that had nothing to do with the time of day. He said he'd heard what happened 3 years ago, that Dad had given him some story about me accusing Travis of destroying my property over nothing and cutting the family off because I was jealous. But Grandpa didn't buy it. He'd lived with Dad long enough to know how he operated. Plus, he remembered all the times Travis broke my stuff when we were kids, and I got blamed for being careless. He asked if we could meet for coffee, said there was something important he needed to discuss, something about his estate and the future. We met at a diner near his place 2 days later. Grandpa looked frailer than I remembered, thinner, moving slower. He ordered black coffee and apple pie. Got straight to the point like he always did. He was sick, stage 4 lung cancer. Doctors had given him 6 months tops. He'd been putting his affairs in order, updating his will, deciding what to do with his property. He owned a house up by Cedar Lake, a beautiful property he'd built himself back in the 70s. 3 acres of pine trees, private dock, stone fireplace, hardwood floors he'd laid by hand. The place was worth close to $1 million now, with the way waterfront property values had exploded. In his original will, everything was supposed to go to Dad. The house, the land, everything. But Grandpa wanted to change it. Wanted the house to go to me instead. I asked why. Not because I didn't want it, but because I needed to understand. Grandpa said he'd talked to Dad last month. Asked him how I was doing. Dad told him I'd gone crazy. Made up lies about Travis destroying my computer. Cut the whole family off because I couldn't handle that Travis was more successful than me. Said I'd always been the problem child. Jealous. Unstable. Couldn't hold down relationships or jobs. That I'd refuse to apologize and make amends even after they'd tried to reconcile. Grandpa didn't believe it. He'd known me since I was born. He remembered me at 7 years old teaching myself to read because I wanted to understand instruction manuals. Remembered me at 12 saving my allowance to buy Travis a birthday present even though Travis had broken my skateboard the week before. Remembered me working every summer through high school instead of hanging out with friends. He knew I wasn't the problem. So he called my aunt, called a few cousins, got the real story. How Travis had destroyed my thesis computer right before graduation. How my parents had laughed at me. How I'd kicked them out and never looked back. How I'd graduated with honors and built an actual career, while Travis was still bouncing between get-rich-quick schemes. Grandpa looked me in the eyes and said his son had failed as a father, that he'd raised a man who couldn't see what mattered, who'd chosen favorites and let the golden child destroy the good one. Grandpa said he wanted to make sure I had something solid, something no one could take away. He wanted the house to go to me, wanted me to have the security he'd built with his own hands. I didn't know what to say. This house represented generational wealth, stability, everything I'd been working toward, everything my parents had denied me. 3 months later, Grandpa passed away, went peacefully in his sleep according to the hospice nurse. The funeral was tense. Dad assumed the house was coming to him. He'd already looked into selling it. Told Travis they'd split the money 60-40, use it to fund Travis's latest business venture. Some mobile app idea that would definitely make millions this time. The will reading happened the following week. I showed up in the suit I wore to client presentations. Dark gray, professional. Dad and Mom and Travis were already there, looking smug, looking like they'd already won. Mom was dressed like she was going to a party. Travis wore a graphic t-shirt with a hole in the armpit. The lawyer was an older woman with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. She read through the smaller items first. Some savings bonds split between various grandchildren. A vintage car collection that went to my uncle. Some tools and equipment for other family members. Then she got to the house. The big one. The $1 million property. She read Grandpa's exact words. The Cedar Lake property and all its contents, including the land, dock, and all structures, to go to Ryan Mitchell, my grandson, in hopes that it serves as the foundation he deserves and never received from his father. You could have heard a pin drop. Dad's face went from smug to confused to red to purple in about 5 seconds. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward and clattered on the floor. Started yelling that the will was invalid, that Grandpa wasn't in his right mind at the end, that I'd manipulated a dying old man, poisoned him against his own son, that I'd probably lied to Grandpa about Travis destroying my computer, that I'd always been a manipulative little liar. The lawyer didn't even blink, said in this calm, professional voice that Grandpa had been evaluated by 2 separate doctors before signing the updated will. Both confirmed he was fully mentally competent, sharp as ever, knew exactly what he was doing and why. The will was airtight, notarized, witnessed, filed properly. The house was legally mine, and there was nothing they could do about it. Travis called me a snake, said I'd stolen his inheritance, that Grandpa had promised him that house years ago. Mom started her crying performance, the fake kind where no actual tears come out. Said, how could I do this to my own family? How could I turn Grandpa against them? Asked what kind of person I was. Dad threatened to contest the will in court, sue me for manipulation or undue influence or whatever he could think of. I looked him dead in the eyes and told him to go ahead and try. Reminded him that I had a lawyer now too, a good one, and that Grandpa had documented everything including the reasons for his decision. Then I walked out, left them sitting there with the lawyer, didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. The house was more beautiful than I remembered from childhood visits. Needed work, yeah. The roof had some missing shingles. The deck was rotting in places. Windows were old and drafty, but the bones were solid. Grandpa had built things to last. I spent the next 8 months renovating, hired contractors for the major stuff like the roof and foundation work, did some of the cosmetic work myself on weekends. Natalie helped me pick out paint colors and light fixtures and furniture. We stripped the old wallpaper and repainted everything in clean whites and soft grays. Refinished the hardwood floors until they gleamed. Updated the kitchen with new appliances and quartz countertops. Replaced all the windows with energy-efficient ones. Built a new deck with composite materials that wouldn't rot. The place transformed. Looked like something from a home design magazine. But here's the thing. I wasn't keeping it as a vacation home for me and Natalie. I had a different plan. A better plan. During those 8 months of renovation, my parents contacted me exactly once. A text from Mom's number. Short and to the point. Said they needed help. Financial help. Dad's construction business had failed. He'd taken out a second mortgage on their house to keep it going. Then he'd taken out a third to fund Travis's latest scheme. Some subscription box service for men that was supposed to revolutionize the market. Except Travis had never actually researched the market, or figured out logistics, or done any actual business planning. Just spent $60,000 on inventory and a website and assumed customers would magically appear. They didn't. Now Mom and Dad were facing foreclosure on their house. The house they'd lived in for 30 years. The house where I grew up. They needed $80,000 to bring the mortgage current and avoid losing everything. Mom's text said it was my duty as a son to help. That family sticks together in hard times. That this was my chance to show I was the bigger person. That surely I could spare $80,000 from my inheritance. The house was worth almost $1 million. What was $80,000? I didn't respond. Just screenshot the text and saved it in a folder on my laptop labeled Evidence. Figured I might need documentation of their entitlement later. 2 months after that text, their house went into foreclosure. The bank seized it. They had to move out with whatever they could fit in Travis's car and a rented U-Haul. Ended up in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment across town. Travis moved in with them because his latest girlfriend had kicked him out after he spent her rent money on more inventory for his failed business. I heard all this through my aunt who'd stayed in touch with me after Grandpa's funeral. She felt bad for them, but also admitted they'd done it to themselves. Said Dad had always been terrible with money, and Travis had always been enabled to fail. She told me Mom and Dad were telling everyone who'd listen that I'd refused to help them, that I'd inherited $1 million property and couldn't spare $80,000 from my own parents, that I'd cut them off out of pure spite, playing the victim card as hard as they could. What they didn't know was that I'd bought their foreclosed house at auction. I'd set up a shell company specifically for this purpose. Miller Property Holdings, LLC. Completely legal, completely anonymous. Paid cash, below market value because it was a foreclosure and needed work. The whole transaction was done through lawyers and title companies. My parents had no idea their former house now belonged to me. I didn't tell them. Just let them live in their cramped apartment. Let them struggle with bills and blame me for their problems. Meanwhile, I kept working on Grandpa's house, kept building my career, kept living my life. Natalie and I got engaged. She understood what I was doing even before I told her the full plan. Said she was proud of me for breaking the cycle, for not letting them drag me down. Then I got a call from a nonprofit organization I'd been volunteering with, the Foundation for Family Financial Abuse Survivors. an organization that helped young adults who'd been financially exploited by their own families, kids who'd had college funds stolen, who'd been forced to hand over paychecks, who'd had credit cards opened in their names without permission, who'd been used as co-signers for loans they never saw, whose parents had stolen their identities. The stories were brutal and way more common than people realized. The executive director asked if I'd be willing to help them develop a residential program. She said the biggest gap in services was housing. These kids needed somewhere safe to live while they rebuilt their lives, while they learned financial literacy and job skills and got counseling, while they repaired their credit and saved money, and figured out who they were outside of family dysfunction. She said they'd been looking for a property for 2 years, but couldn't find anything affordable. Everything was too expensive or too small or in bad neighborhoods. She asked if I knew anyone who might donate property or fund a purchase. I told her I might have a solution. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers. Grandpa's house officially became property of the Miller Haven Trust, a nonprofit organization I'd set up specifically for this purpose. The house would provide free housing for up to 6 young adults at a time, renewable 6-month stays with extensions available, job training through partnerships with local businesses, financial literacy courses, credit repair assistance, mental health counseling, everything these kids needed to get back on their feet. The grand opening was scheduled for a Saturday in June. Beautiful weather, clear skies, perfect temperature. We'd invited local media, city council members, major donors, community leaders. It was a big deal. My picture was in the newspaper. Local TV stations sent a reporter. The house looked incredible. We'd planted gardens full of native plants, built a workshop in the old garage for teaching trades, set up a computer lab for resume writing and job applications, furnished every bedroom, stocked the kitchen, made it a real home. I was setting up chairs on the lawn that morning when a rusted sedan pulled into the driveway. My stomach dropped. I recognized that car. Had seen it in photos my aunt posted on social media. Mom, Dad, and Travis climbed out. They looked rough. Dad had gained probably 50 pounds. Mom looked older, harder, with deep lines around her mouth. Travis's clothes were wrinkled and stained, his hair greasy. They walked up the driveway slowly, looking around at the renovated property with confused expressions on their faces, probably wondering what I was doing here. Mom spotted me, and her face lit up with fake warmth, called my name like we were old friends. I stood there holding a stack of programs. Natalie appeared at my side immediately, took my hand, showed a united front. Dad spoke first, said they'd heard I was doing something with Grandpa's house, thought they'd stop by and see what I was up to. His voice had that forced casual tone that meant he wanted something, probably money. I told them clearly they were trespassing. This was private property. They needed to leave. Travis spoke up, his voice rough, said this was Grandpa's house, that it belonged to the family, that I couldn't just keep them out. I corrected him. Said it belonged to the Miller Haven Trust, that it hadn't been Grandpa's house for almost a year, that they were not family. They were the people who'd tried to guilt me into paying off their foreclosure after spending decades treating me like garbage. Mom took a step forward. Her eyes were already filling with tears. I recognized the performance. Waterworks number 4. Her signature guilt trip move. She said my name in that wounded voice. Said they'd paid for their mistakes, done their probation, suffered enough. Said they were living in a tiny apartment, barely scraping by. Begged me to see that they needed help. I echoed the exact words Dad used to say to me when I needed help. Said it sounded like a budgeting problem, that maybe they should have planned better. Dad puffed out his chest. Said they forgave me, for everything, for sending them to jail, for humiliating them, for cutting them off. Said they realized family was more important than grudges, that they were ready to move past all this, ready to be a family again. The audacity was breathtaking. They were standing on property I owned, destitute because of their own terrible choices, offering me forgiveness. Travis stepped forward, looked at the renovated house with greedy eyes, said since I had a big place in the city, and this house was so big, maybe they could stay here, just temporarily, to get back on their feet. Said he could help maintain the property. Mom could cook and clean. They'd earn their keep. Mom nodded eagerly. Said it would be perfect. They'd be the caretakers, handymen, housekeepers. I wouldn't have to hire strangers. Family looking after family. I looked at all 3 of them, really looked at them. They hadn't changed. Not one single bit. They still saw me as a resource to be used, a bank to be robbed, a safety net they could fall into whenever they screwed up. They genuinely believed that enough time had passed that I'd forget everything, that I'd let them back in. I asked calmly if they wanted to live here. Dad said it would help them so much. Called me son for the first time in years. Said it would help me heal too. That having family around would be good for both of us. I said I understood their position. Then I turned and pointed to the sign I'd installed by the front gate that morning. It was covered with a blue tarp, ready for the official unveiling ceremony in a few hours. I told Travis to go ahead and pull the tarp down. He looked confused but walked over and yanked the rope. The tarp fell away. The sign was beautiful, professionally made from polished oak with gold engraved lettering. It read, "The Miller Haven, a sanctuary for survivors of family financial abuse and exploitation." Below that, in smaller letters, providing housing, education, and support for young adults rebuilding their lives. All three of them stared at it. Travis's mouth hung open. Mom actually gasped. Dad's face went red. Dad demanded to know what this was. I explained calmly that it wasn't a vacation home, that as of yesterday, this property belonged to a nonprofit trust, that I donated it specifically for this purpose. I walked closer to them, told them that starting next month, this house would host 6 young adults who'd been kicked out, exploited, or robbed by their own families. Kids who'd had their college funds stolen, who'd been forced to co-sign loans, who'd had their credit destroyed, who'd been used and abused and thrown away. This would be a place where they could live rent-free while learning trades and rebuilding their credit. A place where they'd be safe from people exactly like my parents. Mom's face went completely pale. Said I'd given it away. Grandpa's $1 million house. To strangers. To people we didn't even know. I said they weren't strangers. They were my real family now. Because family isn't about blood or biology. Family is about the people who have your back. Who support you. Who believe in you. Who don't destroy your life's work because they're bored. I told her she wasn't my family. She was just the woman who gave birth to me. That's it. Biology. Nothing more. Travis lost it. Started yelling that I was insane. That I'd given away $1 million just to spite them. That I was a vindictive psychopath who cared more about strangers than his own blood. I stayed completely calm. Told him I didn't do this to spite them. I did it so the next kid who has his thesis computer smashed by a jealous sibling, or his college fund stolen by selfish parents, or his credit ruined by people who were supposed to protect him, has somewhere safe to go. I built the safety net they stole from me. I became the parent to these kids that my parents never were to me. The silence was complete. Birds were singing in the trees. Water was lapping against the dock. Cars drove by on the road. But in our little circle, the air felt dead. I pointed toward the road. Told them to get off my property before I called the police. And this time, I wouldn't ask for a plea deal. This time, I'd make sure they faced every possible charge. They didn't scream, didn't argue. They just deflated. Like someone had let all the air out. Reality finally hit them. There was no inheritance coming. No golden child rescue. No safety net provided by the son they'd abused for 30 years. Dad looked at the house one last time. A house that should have been his. A house he'd lost because of his own failures. A house that was now a fortress protecting people from men exactly like him. He spat on the ground, weak and pathetic, then turned and shuffled back to the rusted car. Mom looked at me for a long moment. I thought she might finally apologize, finally acknowledge what they'd done. Instead, she whispered that I was a cruel man, that I'd regret this, that God would judge me for abandoning my family. I told her I was counting on it, that I'd gladly explain my choices to God. Travis said nothing, just stared at me with pure hatred, the look of a parasite finally realizing the host has immunity. They got in the car. Engine sputtered and coughed before catching. Black smoke poured from the exhaust. They backed out of the driveway, tires crunching on gravel. I watched until the car disappeared completely. Natalie squeezed my hand, asked if I was okay. I took a deep breath, checked my pulse. Steady. Hands weren't shaking. No fear. No guilt. No second thoughts. I told her I was free. Actually free for the first time in my life. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My father demanded 85% of my salary for my brother's support, and the other 15% is for me. But when I refused, he kicked me out. Years later, they showed up at my door, begging for money. Hey, Reddit, my father tried to financially enslave me from my entitled brother. I said no, got disowned, and built my own life. Fast forward 5 years, and they're broke and desperate. Here's how it all went down. I'm Hunter, 28 male, and I need to give you some backstory to understand just how messed up my family dynamics were. My younger brother Kyle, 25 male, has been the golden child since birth. Not because he earned it, but because my parents decided he was special and needed extra support his whole life. Kyle's not disabled. He's not sick. He just never learned to function like an actual adult because my parents treated him like royalty while I was the family workhorse. Let me paint you a picture of what growing up in this house was like. Every decision my parents made, every dollar they spent, every ounce of attention they gave, it all flowed toward Kyle like he was some kind of gravitational center, and I was just debris floating in orbit. When I was 10 and Kyle was 7, we both wanted to join Little League. I loved baseball, had been throwing a ball around with kids in the neighborhood for years. Kyle mentioned it once because his friend was signing up. Guess who got enrolled? Both of us, technically. But guess whose games Dad attended every single time versus whose games he missed because work was busy? I'd be standing in the outfield watching other kids' parents cheer, while mine were across town watching Kyle strike out for the 3rd time that game. The few times Dad did show up to my games, he'd spend the whole time on his phone texting Mom updates about Kyle's game happening simultaneously. The pattern repeated itself in everything. School concerts, science fairs, parent-teacher conferences. If Kyle had anything happening, that took priority. If I had something important, it got bumped unless Kyle's schedule was completely clear. I remember my 8th grade graduation ceremony. I'd worked hard to graduate with honors, was receiving an academic achievement award. Kyle had a dentist appointment that day. Not an emergency, just a regular cleaning that could have been rescheduled. But Dad said it would be too much hassle to change it. So Mom took Kyle to the dentist, while Dad grudgingly showed up to my graduation 20 minutes late, missing my name being called for the award. Growing up, the favoritism was so obvious it would have been funny if it wasn't my life. When I was 8 and Kyle was 5, I got a used bike from a garage sale for my birthday. Rusty chain, chipped paint, wobbly handlebars. Dad said it had character and would teach me to appreciate things. Kyle got a brand new Trek mountain bike with all the accessories 3 months later, just because. Full suspension, gear shifters, water bottle holder, the works. When I asked why the massive difference, Dad said Kyle needed the confidence boost and I should be happy with what I had. That became the pattern for everything. Christmas mornings were particularly painful. I'd unwrap my 3 or 4 modestly wrapped presents, usually practical things like socks, school supplies, or clearance rack clothes, while Kyle's side of the tree looked like a retail store had exploded. Gaming consoles, designer clothes, expensive toys, latest electronics. The pile would literally be twice as tall as he was. 1 year, I counted. Kyle got 17 presents, totaling probably close to $1,200 in value. I got 5 presents totaling maybe $150. When I pointed this out to Mom, she pulled me aside and gave me this speech about how material things don't matter and how I needed to be more mature and understanding of Kyle's emotional needs. His emotional needs apparently required a PlayStation, 3 games, a new skateboard, and designer shoes that cost more than my entire present collection. My emotional needs could be met with tube socks and a bargain bin calculator. I got hand-me-downs and second-hand everything. Kyle got new clothes, new electronics, new everything. My winter coat was the one Dad wore in high school. He pulled it out of storage like it was some kind of vintage treasure, instead of a faded, outdated jacket that smelled like mothballs. Kyle got a new North Face parka every year, because he's growing so fast, despite me growing just as fast at that age. My parents' excuse was always the same. You're the older brother, you need to set an example of not being materialistic. Translation: we're spending all our money on Kyle, so you get the scraps and you better smile about it. School was the same story, but somehow even worse because my achievements were completely invisible to them. I maintained a solid GPA through high school, 3.8 cumulative, made honor roll multiple times, even won a regional science competition junior year. My project was on sustainable water filtration systems, spent 3 months building working prototypes in our garage. It beat out projects from kids at schools, with actual science labs and funding. My reward? Dad took me to a diner and told me he was proud over a plate of mediocre pancakes, then spent the whole meal talking about Kyle's upcoming birthday party and how much it was going to cost. The trophy from the science competition sat on a shelf in my room collecting dust. They never displayed it, never mentioned it to relatives, never treated it like the significant achievement it was. Kyle barely passed geometry that same semester. Got a D+ after the teacher gave him extra credit opportunities and let him retake 2 exams. My parents celebrated like he'd just been accepted to MIT, took him to a steakhouse, invited the grandparents, made a whole thing out of it. "We're so proud of you for not giving up," Mom gushed, while Kyle stuffed his face with an expensive ribeye. Meanwhile, my science competition win got acknowledged with a pat on the back and discount pancakes at a highway diner. High school was 4 years of this same pattern playing out over and over. I joined the debate team and made it to state championships sophomore year. Dad couldn't come because he'd already bought tickets to Kyle's middle school talent show, where Kyle and his friends did some embarrassing dance routine they'd learned from a video. I tutored other students to make extra money, building a small reputation as the go-to guy for math and science help. Made about $200 a month, which I saved religiously. Kyle used that time to master video games and complain that life wasn't fair. Junior year, I took the SAT and scored 1420, good enough for scholarships at several state schools. My parents' response was to immediately start talking about how expensive college was and how I'd need to work to help pay for it. Kyle was only in 9th grade, but they were already setting aside money for his future educational needs, despite him having a 2.3 GPA and no interest in studying anything. The college application process was something I did entirely alone. Mom and Dad were too busy helping Kyle with his homework to sit down and review my essays or discuss my options. I researched schools, financial aid, scholarships, everything by myself. When acceptance letters started arriving, I'd open them alone in my room. Got into state university with a partial academic scholarship, covering about 40% of tuition. My parents' reaction? That's great, honey, but you'll need to cover the rest yourself. We're saving for Kyle's education, and we can't split our resources. Kyle barely graduated high school with a 2.1 GPA. Didn't even attempt the SAT until his guidance counselor basically forced him to take it senior year. Scored an 890. For context, you get 400 points just for writing your name correctly. When he finally walked across that stage, late because he almost didn't have enough credits, my parents threw him a massive graduation party. I'm talking about a rented community center with catering, a DJ, decorations, the whole production. They invited probably 75 people. The event cost at least $3,000, maybe more. Family members I barely knew showed up to congratulate Kyle on his tremendous achievement of barely meeting the minimum requirements to receive a diploma. Aunts and uncles gave him money, gift cards, presents. He walked away with probably $2,000 in graduation gifts. When I graduated 2 years earlier with honors and a scholarship offer, I got a cake from the grocery store and dinner at home. Mom made spaghetti. Dad complained about how expensive college was going to be. Kyle spent the whole dinner playing on his phone. I think I got $100 total from all relatives combined. Most of them didn't even know I'd graduated until months later, because my parents never mentioned it. Those educational needs Mom had talked about turned into 2 semesters at community college where Kyle majored in sleeping through class and playing video games in the computer lab. He failed remedial English twice, passed introductory psychology only because the professor had a policy of not failing anyone who showed up to at least half the classes. Kyle somehow managed to miss that threshold first semester and had to retake it. Second semester, he declared school wasn't his thing and dropped out to find himself. My parents supported this decision completely, even gave him $1,500 to take a road trip to California to explore his options and figure out what he's passionate about. Kyle spent 3 weeks driving up the coast, posting Instagram photos from beaches and tourist spots, burning through that money on hotels, food, and whatever else caught his attention. Came home with no more direction than when he left, moved back into his room, and went back to sleeping until noon. Meanwhile, I was in my 3rd year at State University working 2 jobs to avoid student loans. Morning shift at a coffee shop near campus, starting at 5:30 a.m., making drinks for other students who were probably getting bankrolled by their parents. Evening shift doing data entry for a local insurance company, mind-numbing work entering numbers into spreadsheets until 10 p.m. My typical day, wake up at 4:45 a.m., shower, get to the coffee shop by 5:20 to help with opening, work until 11 a.m., sprint to campus for a full load of afternoon classes, study between classes, head to the insurance company at 6 p.m., work until 10 p.m., get home around 10:30, study more, sleep by midnight if I was lucky, repeat 5 days a week, plus weekend shifts when I could get them. I maintained a 3.7 GPA through this schedule, graduated in 4 years with my accounting degree completely debt-free, lived off ramen, rice, and whatever discount groceries I could find, wore the same 5 outfits on rotation, didn't go to parties or football games or do any of the normal college stuff because I didn't have time or money. Kyle was living at home rent-free, occasionally doing odd jobs when he needed spending money for whatever new hobby he discovered that week. Rock climbing equipment, photography gear, a guitar he never learned to play, mountain bike accessories. Each new interest cost my parents hundreds of dollars in initial investment before Kyle got bored and moved on to the next thing. The real kicker? My parents constantly reminded me how lucky I was to be naturally good at school, while Kyle had to work harder for everything. The kid who slept through classes and quit community college after 1 year had to work harder than me pulling double shifts while maintaining a near 4.0 GPA. Sure, made perfect sense. After college, I landed a position at Westfield Accounting Associates. Started at $52,000 annually, which was solid for a new graduate in our area. Moved into a small studio apartment, bought a used Honda Civic that actually ran, and started building my life. Kyle was still living at home, still unemployed, still finding himself at 23 years old. My parents kept making excuses about the job market being tough and how he needed time to discover his passion. Meanwhile, I was getting passive-aggressive comments about how I should be helping the family more now that I had a fancy job. Mom would mention how their water heater needed replacing and how tight money was. Dad would bring up Kyle's need for a reliable car to job hunt. The hints were constant and exhausting. I helped out occasionally, gave them $500 when their furnace broke, bought groceries when Mom mentioned they were running low, let Kyle borrow my car twice when his broke down. Typical family support stuff, or so I thought. About 6 months into my job, I got promoted to senior associate. My salary jumped to $68,000, and I finally felt like I was getting somewhere. I called my parents to share the good news. Dad's response? That's great, son. Now we need to talk about family responsibilities. Red flags everywhere. But I was naive. Agreed to come over for dinner that weekend. Big mistake. That Saturday, I showed up at my parents' house expecting a normal family dinner. Instead, I walked into what was basically an intervention staged for the purpose of financial exploitation. Mom, Dad, and Kyle were all sitting in the living room waiting for me. The atmosphere was weirdly formal. No TV on, no casual conversation, just 3 people staring at me like I was about to get sentenced. Sit down, Hunter, Dad said, gesturing to the armchair across from the couch where they were lined up like a tribunal. I sat, already feeling uneasy. Mom had this practiced sympathetic look on her face. Kyle just looked smug, which should have been my first clue about where this was going. Dad cleared his throat and launched into this prepared speech about family obligations and how they'd sacrificed everything to raise 2 sons. He talked about the cost of diapers, school supplies, food, utilities. Made it sound like they'd performed some kind of heroic feat by completing the basic requirements of being parents. We've supported Kyle through his journey of self-discovery, Dad continued, but our savings are depleted. We need help supporting him until he finds his path. Here it comes, I thought. You're making good money now. It's time you contributed properly to this family's well-being. I have been contributing, I pointed out. I helped with the furnace, I buy groceries. That's not enough. Dad's voice got harder. Kyle is your brother. He needs support while he figures things out. You've had every advantage. Good grades came easy to you. You got scholarships. You landed a job right away. Kyle's path is different. He needs more help. The advantages I'd had were the result of me actually working hard while Kyle played video games. But pointing that out would just start a fight. I kept quiet and let Dad continue his pitch. That's when he dropped the bomb. We've calculated Kyle's basic expenses. Living costs, car payment, insurance, food, entertainment, and a reasonable allowance for personal development. It comes to about $2,100 monthly. I did the math instantly. That was more than my rent, utilities, and groceries combined. And they wanted me to pay it? Your take-home after taxes is roughly $4,200 monthly, Dad continued, like he'd been studying my pay stubs. We're asking you to contribute 85% of your salary to Kyle's support. That leaves you with $630 for your own expenses. I sat there stunned. 85%. They wanted me to hand over 85% of my salary to fund my 23-year-old brother's lifestyle while he found himself. The remaining 15% should be plenty for you, Mom added quickly. You're single, you don't have expensive hobbies, and you're good with money. Kyle needs this support right now to get established. You want me to give Kyle $3,570 every month? I asked slowly, making sure I understood correctly. Not give, Dad corrected. Invest. In your brother's future. In this family's future. It's what family does. Kyle finally spoke up. Dude, you're making bank now. I'm struggling here. You really going to let me suffer when you could easily help? Easily help. Like working 2 jobs through college was easy. Like living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old car was living large. Like I should just hand over my entire paycheck because my parents failed to teach Kyle basic life skills. This is temporary, Dad assured me. Just until Kyle gets on his feet. Could be 6 months, maybe a year. They'd clearly planned this whole conversation. Probably spent days preparing their arguments and calculating exactly how much they could squeeze out of me while making it sound reasonable. I asked what Kyle was doing to get on his feet. The room went silent for a beat. He's exploring options, Mom said vaguely. He's had some interviews. What kind of interviews? Kyle shifted uncomfortably. Just some stuff. Retail, maybe some warehouse work. Nothing's clicked yet. Nothing's clicked yet. Translation. I haven't actually applied anywhere because I'm waiting for my dream job to magically appear. Has he applied anywhere this week? I pressed. That's not the point, Dad snapped. The point is he needs support while he figures out his path. You're his brother. You have the means. You have the responsibility. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I'm not giving Kyle 85% of my salary. I have my own expenses, my own life to build. I can't fund someone else's lifestyle while barely surviving myself. Dad's face darkened. So you're saying no to your own family? I'm saying I'm not handing over almost my entire paycheck. If Kyle needs money, he should get a job like everyone else. Kyle actually laughed. See? I told you he wouldn't help. He's always been selfish. That word hit me like a slap. Selfish. I'd worked my tail off through college while he played video games. I'd helped them financially multiple times. I'd let him borrow my car, my electronics, my time, but I was selfish for not wanting to become his personal ATM. You have 1 week to think about this, Dad said coldly. Come back next Saturday with your decision. But understand this. Family takes care of family. If you refuse, you're choosing to not be part of this family. An ultimatum. Fund Kyle's lifestyle or lose my family. They'd really gone there. I left that house feeling like I'd been sucker punched. Drove home in silence, my mind racing. They actually expected me to live on $630 a month while Kyle lived comfortably on my dime. They'd calculated my entire financial situation and decided I existed to fund my brother. That week was hell. Mom called 3 times with variations of, think about your brother, and family is everything. Kyle texted asking if I'd made the right decision yet. Dad sent an email listing all the ways they'd sacrificed for me growing up, like basic parenting was some kind of debt I owed. I called my college roommate Jake and explained the situation. His response was immediate. Dude, that's insane. You know that's insane, right? They're making it sound reasonable. It's not reasonable. It's financial abuse. They want you to fund your brother's unemployment while you live in poverty? Tell them to kick rocks. I also reached out to my former professor, Mr. Patterson, who'd mentored me through some tough accounting courses. He'd always given solid life advice along with academic guidance. When I explained the situation, he was quiet for a moment. Hunter, let me ask you something. If Kyle had worked hard through high school and college like you did, would he be in this position? No. If your parents had taught him responsibility and work ethic instead of making excuses, would he need your support? No. Then this isn't about family obligation. This is about enabling continued failure. You give them that money, and Kyle never learns. Your parents never learn, and you become trapped funding someone else's life instead of building your own. He was right. I'd known it deep down, but needed someone else to confirm I wasn't crazy. The next Saturday, I drove back to my parents' house. They were waiting in the living room again, same setup as before. Dad had this expectant look like he'd already won. So, he said as I sat down, have you made the right decision? I have. The answer is no. I'm not giving Kyle 85% of my salary. Mom gasped like I'd announced I was joining a cult. Kyle's face went red. Dad's expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. No? Dad repeated. No. I'll help the family in reasonable ways, but I'm not funding Kyle's lifestyle while he refuses to work. Refuses to work? Kyle jumped up. I'm trying. The job market is terrible. You dropped out of community college and haven't held a job for more than 3 weeks in 2 years. That's not trying. That's not even pretending to try. How dare you? Mom said, voice shaking. He's struggling and you're attacking him? I'm stating facts. He's 23 years old with no disability, no education, and no work ethic because you've never required him to have one. Dad stood up, his whole body tense. Let me make this very clear. If you walk out that door without agreeing to support your brother, you are no longer welcome in this house. You are no longer part of this family. We will not speak to you, acknowledge you, or consider you our son. The room went silent. Mom was crying. Kyle looked vindicated, like this was what he'd wanted all along. Dad just stared at me, waiting for me to crack. I stood up slowly. Then I guess I'm not your son anymore. Hunter, please. Mom sobbed. Don't do this to us. To your brother. I'm not doing anything to anyone. I'm refusing to set myself on fire to keep Kyle warm. There's a difference. I walked to the door. Dad's voice followed me. You walk out now, there's no coming back. No holidays, no birthdays, no family events. You'll be dead to us. I turned back one last time. I've been dead to you for years. You just had a use for me before. I left, got in my car, and drove away while Mom shouted after me from the porch. Kyle was probably already on his phone telling relatives what a terrible brother I was. The next few weeks were rough in ways I hadn't anticipated. Extended family started calling with their unsolicited opinions, all with variations of the same message. How could I abandon my family? Kyle needed me. I was being selfish. Family is everything. My parents had clearly launched a full campaign to paint me as the villain in this story. My Aunt Rachel was the first to call, voice dripping with disappointment. She actually told me I should be grateful my parents only wanted 85% and not more, like this was some kind of generous compromise. When I pointed out that expecting me to live on $630 monthly while funding my unemployed brother's lifestyle was insane, she went off on this rant about young people today not understanding sacrifice. This from a woman who'd married into money at 23 and whose kids all had trust funds set up before they were born. Easy to lecture about sacrifice when you've never had to make any yourself. My Uncle Frank took Dad's side immediately, didn't even ask for my version of events. Left me this long voicemail about disrespectful kids and family loyalty and how back in his day, people took care of their own. He went on for probably 5 minutes about duty and obligation, occasionally pausing to catch his breath before launching into another monologue about the decline of family values. What Frank conveniently forgot, I'm the kid who mowed his lawn for 3 summers and never got paid because family helps family. Meanwhile, his own kids wouldn't lift a finger to help anyone if it interfered with their country club tennis lessons. Grandma called from Florida, confused because Dad had told her some story about me refusing to help Kyle through a medical emergency. When I corrected the record and explained they wanted 85% of my salary to fund Kyle's unemployment, there was this long silence on the phone. That can't be right, she finally said. Your father wouldn't ask that. He did, Grandma. He gave me an ultimatum. Hand over 85% of my paycheck or lose the family. Another long silence. What did Kyle say about all this? He said I was selfish for not wanting to help him. I could practically hear her sighing across the phone line. That boy needs to get a job, not a handout from his brother. At least one person got it, even if she was 1,200 miles away and too old to really intervene. My parents' neighbor, Mrs. Chen, stopped me at the grocery store one day. She'd known me since I was a kid, used to give me cookies when I'd help her carry groceries inside. Your mother tells me you're going through a rebellious phase, she said carefully, that you've cut them off and won't speak to them. I gave her the real story right there in the frozen food aisle. Watched her expression change from concerned disappointment to shocked understanding. They wanted how much of your salary? She repeated, making me confirm the number. 85%. To support Kyle while he finds himself. Mrs. Chen shook her head slowly. That's not asking for help. That's asking you to sacrifice your entire future for someone who won't even try. She hugged me before she left, told me to stay strong. Said my parents had spoiled Kyle rotten and were now trying to make it my problem. Hearing it from someone who'd watched us grow up, who'd seen the favoritism firsthand, helped more than she probably knew. But for every Mrs. Chen, there were 3 relatives parroting my parents' version. The family narrative became established. I was the ungrateful son who'd abandoned his family in their time of need because I was too selfish to help my struggling brother. The truth, that they'd tried to trap me in poverty to fund Kyle's continued unemployment, got lost in their version of events. The only family member who got it was my cousin Natalie. She called a week after the blow-up. Your dad's telling everyone you refused to help the family and abandoned Kyle, she said. But something didn't add up. What actually happened? I told her everything. The 85% demand, the ultimatum, all of it. Holy crap, she breathed. They wanted you to live on $630 a month? Yep. While Kyle lives like a king on your salary while doing nothing? That was the plan. That's not family support. That's indentured servitude. I'm sorry, I had no idea. My parents probably don't either. They're just hearing Dad's version. At least someone understood. Natalie became my lifeline to information about what was happening with my parents and Kyle. She'd update me occasionally, though the news was never good. Losing my family hurt more than I expected. But you know what hurt more? The realization that they'd never actually valued me as a person. I was a resource to be exploited, a means to an end. The son who did everything right but was never enough because I wasn't Kyle. I threw myself into work after the split. took on extra projects, stayed late, made myself indispensable. My manager noticed and started giving me more responsibility. Within 8 months, I got another promotion to team lead with a salary bump to $79,000. That money I wasn't sending to Kyle went into savings, investments, and actually enjoying my life occasionally. I upgraded to a better apartment, bought some decent furniture, started a retirement fund. Revolutionary concepts when you're not funding someone else's unemployment. Jake convinced me to join his basketball league. Met some good people there, started building a social circle that had nothing to do with my family drama. Dated a woman named Amy for a few months. It didn't work out, but it was nice to have normal relationship problems instead of family exploitation attempts. Life got better without them in it. That was the hardest truth to accept. I was happier alone than I'd ever been as part of that family. 2 years after the split, I got recruited by Morrison Financial Group, a larger firm with better benefits and growth potential. The offer was $95,000, plus bonuses, full health coverage, and a clear path to partner track. I accepted immediately. Around this time, Natalie called with an update. Things weren't going well at home. Dad had been passed over for a promotion he'd expected. Mom had taken a pay cut when her company downsized. Kyle was still unemployed, still living at home, still draining their resources. They're struggling financially, she said carefully. Your mom mentioned having to dip into retirement savings to cover bills. I felt bad for about 5 seconds. Then I remembered they'd tried to trap me in poverty to fund Kyle's lifestyle. My sympathy dried up pretty quick. They made their choice, I told her. They can live with it. Year 3 brought more career success. I was managing a team of 6 accountants, handling major corporate clients, and making a name for myself in the industry. My salary hit $112,000. I bought a small house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Natalie's updates became more concerning. Dad had taken a second part-time job to make ends meet. Mom was working overtime constantly. Kyle was still unemployed, but had started doing gig economy stuff. DoorDash, TaskRabbit, whatever paid cash. They're really struggling, Natalie said during one call. Your mom looks exhausted all the time. Dad's aged like 10 years, and Kyle's getting desperate. He totaled his car last month and they can't afford to replace it. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. They'd chosen Kyle over me, and now they were paying the price. But another part just felt sad that it had come to this. Year 4, I made partner at Morrison Financial Group, youngest in the company's history. My salary jumped to $145,000 plus quarterly bonuses that often added another $20,000 to $30,000. I was living comfortably, saving aggressively, and building the life I'd always wanted. Then came the news I'd half expected, but still dreaded. Natalie called on a Tuesday evening. Hunter, you need to know something. Your parents lost the house. They couldn't keep up with the mortgage after Dad lost his second job. They're moving into a rental apartment, a small one. What about Kyle? Still living with them, still barely working. The gig economy stuff isn't enough to help with bills, and he's apparently been spending what he does make on himself. 2 months later, Natalie called again. Your dad called my mom asking if they knew anyone hiring. He's 58 years old, working retail part-time, and looking for anything else he can get. Your mom's been crying constantly. Kyle's talking about maybe going back to school but has no money for it. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, vindication, even guilt. Instead, I just felt empty. This was what they'd chosen. They'd gambled everything on Kyle, pushed away their successful son, and lost. Year 5 brought everything to a head. I was home on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and reading financial reports, when my doorbell rang. Wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, my heart sank. Dad, Mom, and Kyle stood on my porch. They looked terrible. Dad had aged significantly, hair almost completely gray, deep lines around his eyes. Mom had lost weight, looked fragile in a way I'd never seen. Kyle was heavier, softer, with the look of someone who'd never faced real consequences. Hunter, Dad said, voice rough, we need to talk. I should have closed the door. Should have told them to leave. Instead, some stupid part of me that still remembered being their son stepped aside and let them in. They sat on my couch, the nice sectional I'd bought last year, looked around at my house, at the clear evidence that I was doing well. Mom started crying immediately. Your house is beautiful, she said softly. You've done so well for yourself. What do you want? I asked, staying standing. Didn't offer them drinks or snacks. This wasn't a social visit. Dad cleared his throat. We've been going through a difficult time. Lost the house, struggling with bills. Your mother's working herself to exhaustion, and I'm doing what I can, but it's not enough. Kyle jumped in. Look, man, I know we had that fight years ago, But family is family, right? We need help. The audacity. They showed up at my door after 5 years of silence, looking for money, and opened with, "Family is family." "Help how?" I asked flatly. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We need financial support. Temporary, just until we get back on our feet. Maybe $2,500 monthly? That would cover rent and basic expenses. And you came to me because you're doing well," Mom said. "You have this beautiful house, you're clearly successful. We're your family. We need you." 5 years ago, they'd needed me to hand over 85% of my salary. Now they needed me to fund their lives after their plan failed. The script had flipped, but the demands were the same. "What about Kyle?" I asked. "Why isn't he contributing?" Kyle's face flushed. "I'm trying. The economy's terrible. Gig work barely pays anything, and you're 28 years old. You've had 10 years since high school to get your life together. What have you been doing?" "That's not fair," Mom protested. "Kyle's had a harder path. You've always had it easier." That lie again. The one they'd told themselves so many times they believed it. I laughed. Actually laughed. They looked shocked. "I had it easier?" I repeated. "I worked 2 jobs through college while Kyle played video games in your basement. I graduated with honors while he barely graduated high school. I built a career while he found himself for a decade. But I had it easier?" "You were always naturally good at things," Dad said. "Kyle needed more support. Kyle needed parents who taught him responsibility instead of making excuses. You enabled him for his entire life, and now you're all paying the price. So you're going to let your family suffer?" Mom's voice broke. "After everything we did for you? Everything you did for me? You kicked me out for refusing to hand over 85% of my salary. You disowned me because I wouldn't fund Kyle's unemployment. You chose him over me." "We were desperate," Dad said. "We didn't know what else to do. You could have told Kyle to get a job. Any job. You could have stopped enabling him. You could have treated me like a son instead of a resource. You had options. You chose wrong." Kyle stood up. "So that's it? You're just going to let us struggle while you live in your fancy house?" "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do." Mom sobbed harder. Dad looked like I'd punched him. Kyle's face went through several emotions before settling on rage. "You're a terrible person," Kyle spat. "A terrible brother. A terrible son. Maybe. But I'm not broke, homeless, or desperate. Can you say the same?" Dad stood slowly. "If you send us away now, that's permanent. No more chances. No reconciliation. You'll have lost your family forever. I lost my family 5 years ago, when you gave me an ultimatum. This is just making it official." They stood there for a moment, probably hoping I'd crack. I didn't. Finally, Dad turned toward the door. Mom followed, still crying. Kyle shot me one last hateful look before leaving. I closed the door behind them and stood there for a minute, processing what had just happened. Then I called Natalie. "They came to my house," I told her, "asking for money." "I know. They told my parents they were going to try. Said you owed them for raising you." "I don't owe them anything." "I know. For what it's worth, my parents are starting to see through their story. Dad mentioned that your parents seem to expect everyone else to solve their problems instead of making tough decisions about Kyle. That was something at least. The aftermath was predictable. My extended family split into camps. Some thought I should have helped because family is family. Others quietly acknowledged that my parents had made their bed and needed to lie in it. Natalie kept me updated sporadically. They'd moved to an even smaller apartment. Dad was working 2 part-time jobs, neither with benefits. Mom's health was declining from stress and overwork. Kyle had finally gotten a job at a warehouse, but was apparently terrible at it and constantly complaining. 6 months after their visit, Natalie called with something different in her voice. "Hunter, your mom's in the hospital. Heart attack. She's stable, but it was close." I felt something crack in my chest. Despite everything, she was still my mother. "Is she okay?" "She will be, but the medical bills are going to be rough. They barely have insurance. And you're calling to tell me this because I thought you should know. Not because I think you should do anything about it. Just, you should know." I thanked her and hung up. Sat there thinking about my mother in a hospital bed, probably terrified about bills and recovery and how they'd survive. I could help. I had the money. Could pay her medical bills without even denting my savings. Could set up a fund to help them get back on their feet. But I knew how that story ended. I'd help once. They'd expect it again. And again. And Kyle would never learn. My parents would never acknowledge their mistakes. The cycle would just continue with me trapped in it. Instead, I did something else. I made a donation to a local charity that helped families in financial crisis. Set up a recurring monthly contribution. If my parents wanted help, they could apply like anyone else. They'd get assistance based on need, not because they'd tried to exploit their son. 2 years later, I'm 30, making $165,000, bought a better house in a nicer neighborhood, dating someone great who actually has her life together, built a chosen family of friends who value me for who I am, not what I can provide. Natalie tells me my parents are surviving. Dad's on Social Security now. Mom recovered from the heart attack but is working limited hours. Kyle finally has a stable job. Nothing impressive, but it's full-time with benefits. Apparently facing actual consequences for the first time in his life taught him some things. They don't ask about me anymore, don't send messages through relatives or show up at my door. They've finally accepted that I'm not coming back, not funding their lives, not playing the role they cast me in. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.